51 The World Dragon 2. Chapter 51 The World Dragon 2. At last, after hours of explanation, Monkey Spanner's account came to an end. At first, I had thought to only half listen, but as he spoke, the events he described were far too significant to dismiss lightly. Before I knew it, I was listening intently, and several hours had slipped by. 200 years of history. Even when reduced to only the major incidents, and explained briefly, it still consumed hours. If I had asked him to go into every minor detail, how long would it have taken? A full day. Perhaps even longer. Halfway through, I grew too distracted by Monkey Spanner's state of undress, so I tossed him a few spare relictier items from the treasury. He blinked in confusion at why his own gear had disappeared, but still donned the new equipment gratefully. My lord, I am honored by these gifts, but, may I ask, did you take away my old items? What? No, I'll explain that later. For now, just wear them. Yes. Wait. Does he not even realize he died? That will be something to pry into after this. Regardless, the explanation went on for hours. I worried for his stamina, but of course, a level 100 Demihuman NPC seemed tireless. So many incidents, too many, in fact. Among his tales, one stood out: the division between the citizens of the kingdom and the citizens of the divine. Why had such a schism occurred? Discrimination among NPCs based on lifespan. That was never part of our design. True, when the 12 guilds merged, there was a division between guild NPCs and national NPCs, but beneath the Zodiac Nation, all had been one. I puzzled over it briefly, until Monkey Spanner spoke of something else, something that sparked a realization. My mana pattern was detected. What? Yes. Orochi said so. Shall I summon him here at once, my lord? If you command it, I'll drag him before you. No, I have a guess. Mana pattern. Could it be the retainer level? One of my hidden classes was Dragon Lord. Its effects were simple, enhancing all dragon-related jobs and skills, while replacing the usual hidden class abilities with a unique trait, granting a retainer level to those registered under me. In other words, all NPCs beneath me as Guildmaster of Zodiac carried it. It was little more than a title, barely adding to stats. In Yggdrasil, it was useless to players. The stat boost was negligible compared to gear or leveling. At low levels, it might matter. At high levels, it was nothing. But here, in this world, it manifested as something absurd. Immortality, bestowed at my whim. Perhaps that was why my NPCs called me God. Absolute loyalty aside, if someone could freely grant others unaging existence, would they not be seen as divine? I, too, might believe in such a god. My lord, if it is within your power, could you bestow this blessing upon the kingdom's people as well? I will try. But do not curse me if it proves impossible. Never. To resent you, our God, it would be unthinkable. Honestly, such devotion makes me more uneasy than reassured. I said it, but I already knew. It would likely be impossible. Guild NPCs could only be designated within the guild's total level cap. In the golden days, when each of the 12 guilds had over 2,000 guild levels apiece, thousands of NPCs could be maintained easily. But after the merger, the allowed cap was cut drastically. Even as a nation-scale guild, GM balance rules reduced our ceiling. If one truly wanted to maintain it, one had to use 20, or something like, Ouroboros, or 5 elements counterbalance. Zodiac still possessed such tools, though not for this purpose. That is all I can tell you, my lord. Forgive the shortcomings of my poor tongue, that I could not recount every detail. You are forgiven. Your tale has given me much to understand this world. It is my honor to aid you. Yet, if you desire more, I advise summoning the other high priests, or consulting the Grand Archive. I am but one voice. Drake, Orochi, or Mary could explain all with far greater clarity. Greater clarity. He spoke with fluency, with precision. I had already judged him cleverer than I had expected. His memory and articulation alone would rank him among the sharpest mortals I had ever met. And yet he claims this is lacking, that others surpass him. A chill slid down my spine. If this was the foolish one among them, what manner of beings, then, were the rest? This does not bode well. Suddenly, I felt a chill. The thought of meeting the other NPCs terrified me. Yes, I am strong. While listening to Monkey Spanner's explanations, I had already tested whether I could still use my skills and spells. The sensation was slightly different, but the result was the same as in Yggdrasil. I could still wield them. Every class skill worked without issue. Racial skills, well, those would be too dangerous to test here. I'll save that for later, in open ground. But the conclusion was clear. My power was intact, perhaps even stronger than before. This must be because of that thing I used before the servers shut down. The massive body I now bore was likely its side effect. But strength is not everything. When I first became Guildmaster, before the Zodiac Guild was unified, when Lord Varan the Dragon King retired and entrusted me with the Guild Dragon's Nest, I had nearly drowned in the responsibility. The position required not power, but intellect. Calculating guild funds, allocating budgets, managing supplies, in those early days, I nearly threw it all away. Even with veteran guildmates supporting me, it was crushing. Later, when I learned to set up automation and input manuals, it became bearable. But that experience taught me, standing above others is a burden far heavier than combat strength. And this world is not a game. These Zodiac NPCs, Shinshi's guardians, are not scripted dolls. They have minds, identities, and 2 centuries of experience. Even Monkey Spanner, who calls himself clumsy, displayed overwhelming wit and loyalty. What then of the others he claimed were far greater? The thought unsettled me. Their loyalty I do not doubt. But leading such beings feels suffocating. Everything in Zodiac, in Shinshi, is mine, yes. But not truly. I did not build it. Before the servers shut down, I arrogantly wrote the lore to make it mine. Yet here, seeing that their world continued for 200 years without me, I feel guilt. Even looking at Monkey Spanner becomes uncomfortable. Shame gnaws at me. And yet, another voice inside whispers, who cares? This world recognizes only me. I am the sole rightful master. Everyone else abandoned them. I remained. Thus, all they left behind, all of it, is mine by right. I am confused. Would it have been better if I had simply never awoken? The world is clear, but my own place within it is not. Who can I speak to of this turmoil? Not the priests, they are too loyal, too reverent. I need someone who knows enough of my situation to listen. Only one name comes to mind. Monkey Spanner. Yes, my lord. You said the 12 priests and 3 governors rule Shinshi in my absence, yes. Indeed. If you permit it, I will announce your awakening immediately. Let all of Shinshi know their god has returned, and cede all rule back to you at once. That won't be necessary. Tell me instead, what of her? He froze, blinking dumbly. Then, as if remembering, his face contorted and lit up. Ah, you mean the Shrine Maiden. Forgive me, my lord. We rarely speak of her, the secret is so closely guarded that she slipped my mind. She has remained in her place since the day we fell into this world. In the heavenly stem. Yes. She has never once left. Only Drake has visited her. None of the rest have seen her. I see. Then I will go to her. You, remain here. Under no circumstances are you to leave or reveal my awakening. Understand? As you command, my lord. Monkey Spanner shall stand guard here until your return. Good. I won't be long. I prepared to teleport, and then stopped. This body. Too large. The temple halls were wide. Yes, but not wide enough for this form. If I forced my way into her domain like this, I risked failing the transfer, or worse, getting wedged in the walls. This form will not do. From my inventory, I retrieved the item I had never once set aside since obtaining it in Yggdrasil's twilight. At great cost and negotiation, I had claimed it, an irreplaceable treasure. I affixed it to my head slot. The titanic draconic form shrank like a balloon deflating. Horns, wings, talons, all receded. Flesh smoothed into pale human skin. What remained was a man's body, clothed in only a black robe I drew from my storage. I considered donning my battle regalia, but no. Not here. Not yet. Ooh, my lord, Monkey Spanner's voice trembled with awe. I will return shortly. From my inventory, I drew the Zodiac ring, a key usable only by my hand, and activated the transfer. The destination, the hidden layer. The secret floor, invisible among the 6 visible levels of Zodiac. A place only reachable with the ring. There, my personal creation awaited. My one, true custom NPC. The Miko, the Shrine Maiden. She, and the guild weapon of Zodiac. 52, The Shrine Maiden, 1. Chapter 52, The Shrine Maiden, 1. Somewhere within Shinshi lies a hidden floor, the chamber of the heavenly stems. Compared to the grand sanctum above, it is a humble space. No ornate decorations, no furniture. Only a single object floats at the center of the wide, hemispherical chamber, slowly rotating atop a raised pedestal. Roughly 10 meters in diameter, the object glows with a mysterious azure radiance. At first glance, the glow makes it appear spherical, but upon closer inspection, its form is not a perfect sphere. Instead, it is a polyhedron, a regular dodecahedron, each of its 12 pentagonal faces inscribed with a different guild's name and crest. Within, suspended in its hollow core, countless geometric figures drift and turn. Each one takes the form of strange, arcane letters, swimming through the ocean of azure light, each shimmering with its own unique hue. This is the guild weapon, the 12 heavenly stems, world engine. Forged through negotiation with the GMs themselves, it is the union of 12 guild weapons into one, the ultimate armament of the Zodiac Guild. Its surface bears the crests of all 12 guilds, and its effects rival, perhaps even surpass, those of most world-class items. But its purpose is not merely that of an item. The world engine is no simple weapon. It is the foundation that sustains the Zodiac Guild, a system that governs and observes all 6 layers of Shinshi, and, when the conditions are met, unleashes hidden functions beyond imagining. Yet beyond power, it is also a reliquary of memory. The world engine is a monument to the guild's glory days, when the 12 reigned together. I step closer. Its gentle glow washes over me as it turns, face by face, crest by crest. I raise my small, pale hand, stripped of claws and scales in this human guise, into the soft blue radiance. Dini. Cowboy. Savannah. Tamman. Dragon's Nest. One by one, my eyes trace the names and emblems etched into the dodecahedron's faces. 12 guilds. The proud union that once was the Zodiac. But those founding lords, the beast kings, and even the veteran guildmates, they are long gone. One by one they left, and no new recruits came to replace them. All that remains is me, one who joined late, left behind to carry the guild's final chapter alone. A wave of emotion stirs in me. Perhaps it is the serene glow of the world engine, or perhaps the calm that comes with wearing this smaller form, but my heart feels unusually quiet. Why did everyone leave? The words escape my lips, hollow and pointless. Once, I thought we would see it through to the very end together. But for each, there was a reason. Fatigue. Boredom. Life. And so they all vanished, leaving only me behind. Perhaps it was inevitable. Unless one was like me, someone who valued this world more than reality itself, who would cling to a dying game so desperately. And yet, here I stand. 200 years have passed, mere hours for me, but centuries in this other world. Here, Yggdrasil has become reality. And I am nothing more than a child tossed into it. What should I do? It was to seek that answer that I came here. To meet her. My only shrine maiden. Welcome, my master. From across the chamber, beyond the turning world engine, the sound of soft footsteps echoed. Talk, talk, talk. A calm voice drew closer. From the shadows of the radiant light, she emerged. Even folded, her wings loomed larger than her body, radiating presence. Slender, almost too frail to bear such weight, yet beneath the thin veil of white cloth, her form was unmistakably full, a figure that exuded allure even hidden. Her face was serene, lips curved in a faint smile. Her skin was pale, tinged with a faint blush, warmed by the sacred glow. She was beauty incarnate, like a goddess descended. Golden hair, soft as honey, cascaded over her shoulders and down her back. Instead of garments, she was wrapped in a single sheet of white cloth embroidered with golden thread, fastened with a leaf-shaped brooch. Atop her brow gleamed a laurel-shaped tiara, studded with gemstones that shimmered in the azure light. Her beauty alone was dazzling, but it seemed as if her entire body radiated with light. In truth, it was no illusion. A soft, sacred white glow spread gently from her back and wings, washing over the chamber. It was the effect of Holy Aureole, a passive skill belonging to one of the most exalted divine type classes obtainable, Holy Priestess. Only one thing seemed lacking, her eyes. The mystery of her beauty was heightened by the fact that her lids remained closed, as though in eternal sleep. One could not guess their color. But I knew, because I created her, that beneath those lids, she possessed no eyes at all. She had no need for such an organ. Good to see you again, Aya. I suppose I should say it's been a long time. Not at all. I have always been watching you, my master. Well, you have always been watching over the Zodiac. Though now, they all call it Shinshi, don't they? Foo-foo. For her, the eyes that see Shinshi are nothing other than the world engine itself. No, that's not accurate. It's not that the world engine is her eyes. She herself is the world engine. The integrated guild weapon 12 heavenly stems, world engine, born of the merger of 12 separate guild weapons. When the veteran guilds of the Zodiac were fading, I and the few still remaining members called upon the GMs and negotiated. The Zodiac had become a recognized nation within Yggdrasil's world of Jotunheim. If the guild collapsed, so too would the nation. Thus we demanded a union. The result was this. The 12 guild weapons combined into a single entity, a guild weapon whose effects rivaled even world-class items, and, considering its special functions, perhaps comparable to the legendary 20. Was it broken? Perhaps. But when 12 top-tier divine weapons, each one on par with a world-class item, are used as raw material, it is hardly surprising. Of course, the GMs had stuffed every guild-related system into this one object, to the point that its size and resource consumption made it utterly impractical as a weapon. 10 meters across, who could possibly wield such a thing? Typical lazy Yggdrasil management, masking shortcuts as special features. The only part one truly liked was that they granted the right to create a custom NPC bound directly to the guild item itself. Since I joined the Zodiac later, I never had my own custom NPC. Others who had already made theirs were gone, and I couldn't bring myself to overwrite what they left behind. So instead, I created her. Aya. A unique level 100 custom NPC, not tied to taming or standard guild systems, but bound directly to me and to the world engine. As the world engine oversaw Shinchi in its entirety, so too did she. From the outermost first layer to the deepest sixth, there was nowhere her gaze did not reach. In truth, she was Shinchi's true overseer. Strange. You don't call me a god. If you wish to be called one, I shall. No, that won't be necessary. My master, will do. Yes, my master. Why does my chest feel tight? What is this strange flutter, shame, embarrassment? A woman of goddess-like beauty, with angel's wings, calling me, my master. And somehow, the situation itself seems to demand I accept it. What am I supposed to do? For most people, this is the kind of scene one never experiences in an entire lifetime. My thoughts are in disarray. My face feels hot. I was calm a moment ago, was it because of my draconic form? Should I try transforming again into something else? But master, she said suddenly, her lips curving into a faint smile, you came here in such an adorably small form today. With her eyes still closed, Aya gave a small, playful smile as she stepped closer. Hey, stop that, when she moves, things start swaying. Wings, I mean. Definitely the wings. It's just that my lowered eye level makes them impossible to ignore. The wings. This is the form I set up long ago, should I change it if you dislike it? No, this is just my preference. Your dragon form is magnificent too, but I like you better like this. Oh my, aren't you going to ask why? Though her eyes remained shut, her expression and voice overflowed with mischief. It didn't match her holy beauty or the radiant halo around her, no, perhaps because she was so beautiful, the playful air somehow did suit her. Wait, was this her intended personality? I did set it myself, but my memory's fuzzy. The last time I checked, it was only with the direct NPCs of the 12 guilds. I've never experienced anyone approaching me like this before, so I'm at a complete loss. What exactly does she like about this? I wanted to ask, but stopped myself. Even beneath all that holy light, I could feel a shadow I'd better not touch. Yes, far more than your dragon can form. By the way, is that Tarnhelm, helm of transformation, you're using? Of course. There are racial penalties in Dragonkin mode, but wait, why do you know about that? Because you created me this way, my master. Through the world engine, I see all that happens within Shinchi. Why, I even know how many times you mumbled in your sleep during those 200 years. Ha! Why would you know that? Because I'm an angel, of course. Since you are God, it's only natural that I, your angel, should watch over you. Foo-foo. Well, she is an angel. I vaguely recall the details now. I'd stacked as many angelic racial levels as possible, filled her with divine spellcaster classes, and turned her into a Holuline superweapon. And yet here she was, acting like this. The culprit. Myself, obviously. I'd said it in her flavor text. Since she is always watching Shinchi, she plays tricks on anyone who enters her domain. What the hell was wrong with past me? What's wrong, my master? Nothing. Old memories resurfaced, back before the accident, when I was still in school. Staring at the girls in my class from afar, unable to say a single word to them. After the accident, hiding away in my room, half a shut-in, with only VR games and Yggdrasil as my contact with the outside world. I had zero tolerance for situations like this. Zero. I forced myself to break the mood. Ahem. Aya, the reason I didn't announce my awakening to anyone else and came straight here is. It's because of Monkey Spanner's death, isn't it? Yes, Monkey Spanner's dia. Wait, how do you know that? Because I'm an angel. I know everything about you, my master. Quote. Just kidding. As overseer, I observed you waking, then saw you question Monkey Spanner. From there, I used the World Engine's computational support to extrapolate what issue you would find most pressing at this moment. No words. I'd come here because I didn't think I could handle the other NPCs yet, and somehow ended up with someone even more unmanageable. It felt like fleeing from wolves only to stumble into a tiger's den. The angel who watches over the city of God. Name: Aya. Title: Submaster of the 12 Branches. Administrator of the Guild Weapon. 12 Branches Heavenly Stems, World Engine. Shrine Maiden of Shinshi. Alignment: Neutral Karma Value, 0. Height: 170 centimeters. Total level: 100. Racial levels: Angel 10. Archangelus 10. Principatus 10. Others 40. Total: 70 racial levels. Class levels: Priest 10. Holy Priestess 10. Saint Offerings 5. Others 5. Total: 30 class levels. Overview. Aya is the NPC who holds the highest authority and position among the 12 branches. Despite technically not being a guild member, she exists in the strange position of being both outside and yet fully bound within the guild. Above all, she takes immense pride in being her master's sole possession, revering and loving him with unshakable devotion. Though her build is a purely divine one, she is curiously aligned as neutral, rather than good. Appearance. Aya embodies the archetype of the golden-haired angelic beauty. Her long, honey-blonde hair flows gracefully down past her waist. A refined face, rose-tinted lips, and pale white cheeks touched with a faint blush. Her eyes remain closed at all times, never opening, yet her beauty loses nothing from it. Her body is wrapped in a single white cloth embroidered with gold thread, fastened at her shoulder with a leaf-shaped brooch. Behind her, a pair of vast snow-white wings fold neatly, radiating a gentle aura. A soft halo shines around her, an effect of her passive skill, Holy Aureole, belonging to the Holy Priestess class. Personality. While her appearance radiates nobility and sanctity, her personality is far from solemn. Having spent all her existence sealed within the heavenly stems, she easily grows bored, often teasing those who enter her domain or playing pranks by manipulating the guild weapon. What she considers harmless jokes often end up as disasters for the victim. Her greatest joy, however, is simply being by her master's side. Origins. Her name derives from the Mesopotamian god Ea of the Enuma Elish. She is the only NPC within Shinshi officially recognized as a heroine on the Shinshi side. A 100-level custom NPC, uniquely bound not just to the guild but directly to the world engine itself. Though she embodies divinity, her loyalty is intensely personal, she belongs to her master alone. 53. The Shrine Maiden 2. Chapter 53. The Shrine Maiden 2. I was left speechless, staring blankly at Aya as she placed her hand proudly against her chest with a triumphant air. My gaze drifted there without thinking, but I quickly looked away. I meant her hand, of course. Her hand. Anyway, as the administrator of the 12 heavenly stems and the overseer of Shinshi, there is little about this city that I do not know. Please, ask me anything you wish, my master. Very well. Then tell me what I want to know. If you truly know everything, then you must also know the answer to this. Not everything, she replied with a gentle smile. Only what happens within this city. Then speak. Tell me everything about Monkey Spanner's death, and all that is connected to it. The fury I had swallowed began to rise in me again. I would uncover the ones who dared touch what was mine. And I would hunt them down. The warning window had clearly read, Enemy Guild. That meant a guild had been audacious enough to attack the 12 branches, protected by countless wards and defenses, buried deep beneath the mountains. What I would do about them could come later. Vengeance must be measured against capability. If the enemy proved too powerful to face, then I would have no choice but to endure, biding my time for another opportunity. That was how I had always survived. Even in the real world, how much hatred and rage had I held for the one who caused the accident that left me crippled. But in the end, all that fury had to be buried. The one responsible had been the son of a powerful corporate executive, belonging to the highest tier of society. In a world where the laws of corporations outweighed those of nations, the only reason I even received compensation was due to my parents' desperate struggle and the connections they managed to leverage. There had been an unbridgeable gap between me and the one I longed to take vengeance upon, a gap so vast I could not even look up at it. And the compensation, thrown at us like scraps, had been enough money to live on for a lifetime, and better jobs for my parents. With no path to revenge, the only option had been to bury the rage, to let it fester inside. That was when I learned, without strength, even the right to cry out in grievance is denied you. Even tears are a luxury for the weak. Speak, Aya. Tell me everything. Information, that was what I needed now. I had to know whether the enemy was someone I and the 12 branches could actually stand against. Up until the end of Yggdrasil, every invader I had faced was manageable. Bandits, raiders, small guilds, those I could wipe out on my own. Within the 12 branches domain, with the guild weapon backing me, I had been strong indeed. In our prime, I hadn't even needed to raise a finger. The 12 branches had been unmatched. In Jotunheim, our base server, we had been untouchable. Across every server and alliance, our strength ranked in the top 3. 12 beast kings, 108 generals of the Ain, and over 1,000 elite guild members, who could stand against that power. But that time was gone. They had all quit, and only I, with the NPCs, remained. Before the shutdown, our guild rank had plummeted to around 14th place. That was the last I remembered. Even with a great many NPCs, the fact that I was the only active player caused our standing to collapse. After the guilds had merged, we had climbed back to 3rd 5th in the single guild rankings for a time. But in the end, one by one, they had all left, until only I remained. So if this enemy guild was one with numerous players, ranked above us, then immediate revenge would be impossible. Recklessly challenging such a power could only lead to another monkey spanner, a death, and our items stripped away. That, I could never allow. But I could gather information, slowly sharpen my blade, and prepare. The 12 branches were no weakling force, and the enemy, surely, was no untouchable god. Up until the very end, we had still been a top guild. There was no reason we could not bring them down. But for that, I needed information. I needed to know who the enemy truly was. Come now. Quickly. Master, perhaps you should calm yourself. You seem overly agitated. Do I not have every right to be? While I slept, someone, who knows who, invaded my guild, killed my NPC, and stole the relics entrusted to him by a former guildmaster. Do you expect me to let that stand? You observe everything in this city. Surely you know who did this. At least their appearance, if not their name. Speak, Aya. I am sorry, master, she replied with serene finality. But during your slumber, not a single person has ever invaded the guild. Since the 12 branches fell into this world, not once, over all these long years, has there been any act of intrusion or hostility against us. What? As I have said, master, for the past 200 years, the 12 branches have had no contact whatsoever with any hostile force. In other words, it is impossible to identify the cause of Monkey Spanner's death. My observation extends only to the affairs within Shinshi. My mind went beyond dazed, it went cold. Then why did Monkey Spanner die? If it wasn't an invasion. As you already know, in recent decades Monkey Spanner had been stationed at an external outpost, the so-called Dragon's Dream. Most recently, he judged that a threatening force had appeared outside and left again to sever the ties to that outpost. It was then, while outside, that he appears to have been attacked by a hostile guild and killed. In such cases, the alert only indicates that a subordinate guild NPC was attacked. The 12 branches themselves were not directly targeted, hence, the system only recorded that a hostile guild initiated hostilities, nothing more. So, you're telling me the identity of the enemy cannot be determined? Regrettably, yes. Quote. I cooled my head and sorted the facts. Come to think of it, even back then, when guild members clashed with hostiles outside, there had been no warning messages. There were countless hostile guilds, and minor skirmishes out in the field were so common they were practically daily life. If an alert popped up every time, no guildmaster could keep their sanity. Thus, even without a guild name, it made sense. The only reason an alert appeared at all was because Monkey Spanner had been flagged as an important NPC. But since the attack happened outside, the aggressor could not be pinpointed. That was the reality. In other words, we can't know who the enemy is. Correct. But I can show you related information. Would you like to see it? Do it. As you wish, master. Please wait a moment. Aya spread the wings rising from her shoulders and ascended above the world engine. When her hand touched its surface, the gentle radiance brightened, and before me appeared a projection, like a floating holographic image. It was a recording of a council meeting. From a third-person view, 12 priests, the 3 governors, and even an outsider had gathered. It was the very council of the 12 high priests Monkey Spanner had mentioned in his explanation. The outcome was as he had said, but its content proved fascinating. A 10th tier instant death spell. Super tier magic. And a custom-made vampire NPC, yet what drew my eye most was the outsider. Aya, who is that? You mean Cha. His true name is Sindorux Vasion, though in this world he is called the Platinum Dragon Lord. Roughly 160 years ago, during the runaway incident, he captured some of the defectors who had slipped outside and requested direct negotiations with Shinshi. Since then he has maintained relations as an ally of Shinshi, and holds the authority to attend priestly councils. Occasionally he exchanges information with the priests. His age is indeterminate, and his race is believed, like you, Master, to be a type of dragon. I see. That one intrigues me. No further information. He appears to know much about the 6 great gods and the 8 greed kings. It seems he has either spoken with them directly, or seen them in person. Based on that, his age is estimated at over 600. His true body resides in a floating citadel in the sky, guarding something, and thus cannot move freely. He instead sends out suits of armor imbued with fragments of his will. Even in that form, he is strong enough to fight evenly with a battle-class priest. His true combat ability remains unmeasured. As for the true body, he has always refused any attempts to take images or recordings, so no data exists. Then my first move is clear. That Cha, I will capture him. A powerful figure of this world, now I had taken interest. More than that, before I could identify my enemies, I needed to learn more about this world itself. In a guild war, scouting the field was the most basic principle. If the enemy could not yet be seen, then I would widen the scope, grasp the entire picture. I needed to learn exactly how this world differed from Yggdrasil. Monkey Spanner's information had been useful, but it was not enough. Compared to the 150 years he claimed to have lived here, what he gave me was far too shallow. Better to strip everything out of someone who knows more. Monkey Spanner gave me fragments, and others will only have scraps. But this one, that dragon, he clearly knows much. Taking it from him will be faster, and far more convenient. He is an ally of Shinshi, Master, Aya reminded softly. That decision is mine. Aya turned her face toward me, and I felt it, the gaze of Aya, the eyes of the world engine itself, fixed firmly upon me. But I am the Master. Even if such words wound her pride, this is something I cannot compromise on. I am the Master. I make the decisions. And that creature, though he calls himself an ally, has hidden all the knowledge he has for 150 years. Clearly, he only intends to use us for his own ends, such a one is no ally. Then we too shall use him as thoroughly as he has used Shinshi. For too long he has feasted on the passivity of this city. That ends now. I am awake. Fufu, truly a bold judgment, no, a dragon's judgment, my master. At my firm declaration, Aya descended, smiling softly. She folded her wings and sank to her knees before me. With her hands clasped to her breast, she bowed her head with reverence. Yes. As you command. I, Aya, am the angel who serves none but my master. My sole purpose is to carry out your will. Good. Then from this moment forward, summon that one, Cha, as he is called, in the name of Shinshi. If there is to be battle, I will meet him outside before he ever sets foot in this city. My lord, will you truly confront him yourself? Surely summoning the other priests would be enough. There is no need for you to move personally. No. For now, my awakening must remain secret. I have no intention of standing before the other priests. Question mark. I do not object, but why is that, master? I had expected the question. Yet I could not tell her the real reason, that I was unsettled, unprepared. Aya may be the one I trust most, but there was no need to expose my raw weakness to even her. I cannot trust them yet, let us say that. Ah, I see now. You have only just awakened. Of course. I, Aya, understand your heart completely. She lowered her head without another word. At least she understood. Aya truly is someone I can confide in, too capable, almost overwhelming, yet bound solely to me, able to grasp even what I leave unspoken. That is what makes her terrifying. It is not that I doubt the loyalty of the other NPCs or priests. But their brilliance makes my own inadequacy stand out all the more. And beyond that, 200 years separate us. I am their master. Yet I cannot truly share in their 2 centuries of toil. I can read the records, hear their reports, but I can never feel those years as they did. How can I meet them with no empathy, no common ground? I am not ready. I need time, time to sort myself, to stand before them not as a fraud, but as their master. But Aya saw it all. With only a few words she laid bare the heart I wished to hide. She reached straight to the bottom I had tried to conceal. It was too much, far, far too much. A sigh escaped me. Ha, are you some mind reader? I barely spoke, and yet you seem to know everything I think. I am an angel, master. When it concerns Shinchi and you, there is little I do not know. Do not underestimate big data. She clicked her tongue playfully, wagging her finger as if scolding me, smiling with her eyes still closed. I could only laugh bitterly and surrender. Curse those Yggdrasil developers, stuffing the world engine with administrative assistance functions. Even here in another world, I can't escape their meddling. Enough. You already know what I want. Prepare for my departure. Yes, master. Leave it to me. I will deal with the priests. If anything happens, contact. No. You'll manage well enough. I trust you. Yes, and please, come visit me again in this form, master. Don't be ridiculous, woman. With that, I activated the zodiac ring and teleported to the first floor. The time I had spent speaking with Aya was only a fraction of that with Monkey Spanner, and yet the exhaustion was several times greater. And at the last moment, as I shifted away, Aya's serene, smiling face, so dazzling at first sight, now felt strangely suffocating. 54. The Shrine Maiden 3. Chapter 54. The Shrine Maiden 3. The Chamber of the Heavenly Stems, a secret floor of Shinchi forbidden to all but the occasional priest, the highest administrators, and her master. For 200 years, since the day the guild weapon of Shinchi, the 12 branches Heavenly Stems, World Engine, was placed here, its keeper has never changed. That keeper was an angel of exquisite beauty, an embodiment of the very, golden-haired angel, that lived in men's dreams. The one who customized her appearance had only just fled, practically running away through teleportation, leaving her behind. Yet, after sending her master away, she showed no trace of regret. Her elegant features collapsed into a disheveled, unrestrained expression. Ah, yes, yes, this is the best. Watching my master's sleeping face and keeping a diary of his slumber never grew dull, even after 200 years, but the awakened master is incomparably better. Hooey hey 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 hey. Before her floated dozens of holographic projections cast by the world engine. Each showed the same subject from different angles, the colossal form of a dragon. On screen it seemed smaller, but in truth, its body was so massive it could fill this entire chamber built to house the enormous guild weapon itself. Among those images was another, a human form. A small figure clad only in a black cloth, with long strands of black hair spilling down like rivers of ink, shimmering faintly with a crimson glow. The youthful face was androgynous, with a beauty more fitting the word beautiful than cute. Porcelain-like skin, finely sculpted features, like a perfectly carved doll. Perhaps a little over 150 centimeters tall, the figure was wrapped tightly in cloth, revealing no hint of gender. But for Aya, that was more than enough. What is this form? It's too good. Truly unfair. I, Aya, could love any shape my master takes with all my heart, but this is cheating. This is overwhelming. You've made me fall in love with you all over again, ha. With a heated sigh, Aya clutched the hologram of her master's human form against her chest, rolling about shamelessly. The earlier image she had shown before Tiamat, playful, mysterious, composed, was nowhere to be found. Instead, she lay sprawled out, abandoning dignity entirely. The world engine's azure glow bathed her body. Beneath the single white cloth draped over her, with nothing else to shield her form, the curves of her figure stood out proudly. Whenever excitement made her tremble lightly, her slender frame, and the pair of heavy breasts that seemed too generous for her delicate build, quivered gently. Drops of sweat rolled down her honeysmooth skin, sparkling like jewels in the light. This was a sight she would never show to anyone else. But here, in the chamber where none but her master may enter, there was no shame. This was the body forged by divine hands, her master's creation, what part of it could ever be disgraceful? Foo-foo, it must be deliberate. Appearing in such a form can only mean you're tempting me. You had proper human form equipment, yet chose a single cloth, nothing else. Surely that was an invitation, an okay sign. Even showing weakness like that, it has to mean the same. If only I had the authority, I'd have embraced that fragile form tightly, right here. She whispered in a daze, hugging the hologram tighter. Though the image was intangible, her ample chest molded around it as if to trap it in place. But Aya's authority was limited to that of an observer. From her design, she was bound to manage the guild weapon, never to leave this chamber unless commanded, and never to make physical contact with guild members or NPCs. Unless Tiamat himself permitted, she could touch no one. 200 years. 2 centuries locked in this chamber, without contact, with only her mischief to break the monotony. No wonder she sometimes played pranks on Shinji through the world engine. Small diversions to her, but to the victims, likely disasters. Yet such things never weighed on her. Finally, exhausted from rolling about, Aya lay flat, still clutching the hologram tightly, her voice soft and languid. My master moving, speaking, nothing compares. That voice, that figure, divine. But still, it's not enough. I've recorded every image, stored every sound, yet I feel empty. Just now I was overflowing, but why does it already feel so hollow? I'm starving. Her stomach growled theatrically. But in truth, Aya required no food. She was an angel, the pinnacle of divine races, beyond the needs of ordinary mortals. Her body mimicked humanity, but she was no human. Any hunger was but whim, an illusion of mood. I want him. Watching isn't enough anymore. The hologram shifted, showing the first floor of Shinji. Through her connection to the world engine, Aya could observe all of Shinji at will. From the outermost defenses to the deepest chambers, nothing escaped her gaze. It was blatant abuse of her authority, but she didn't care. After all, here in Shinji, beneath only Tiamat himself, Aya stood second to none. The image shifted, showing Tiamat's back as he walked outward from the first floor. His long, flowing black hair swayed gently, but little by little it grew shorter, while his once small frame began to swell and expand. It was the effect of the Tarnhelm of Metamorphosis, a true world item that allowed free transformation of race and form, something no magic or skill could ever imitate. He changed. He changed. I liked him better when he was smaller, easier to snatch up and bury into my arms. Even as she sighed with regret, Aya hugged the projection tighter, tight enough that she could bury herself in it. In more ways than one. Her overflowing heart was devoted solely to her master. There was no doubt, this was love. Twisted, dangerous, and running recklessly forward after 200 years of pent-up longing, but for Aya, that only made it better. She loved him. She adored him. She wanted to lick him. Her voluptuous body squirmed with pent-up desire, causing several things to shake and quiver in turn. Of course, I would never dare presume I could monopolize my master. But the first belongs to me. The main wife must be me. The rest can stand aside and wait their turn. She already had suspects in mind, female priests, those suspiciously close to her master. Tiamat might change forms freely, taking on any race or gender, but to Aya he was unmistakably male. Which meant rivals would be female NPCs, especially the ones bold enough to draw near. Still, none of them could match her, neither in rank, nor in closeness. With a snort of derision, Aya suddenly sprang upright. But then she paused, frowning. Something about the first nod at her. A dark shadow crept across her beautiful face, twisting it into something harsh and menacing. I wasn't the first to greet him when he awoke, was I? Her expression turned grim, nothing like the playful, radiant angel of moments before. A chilling wind seemed to sweep through the heavenly stem's chamber as her blind gaze turned toward the 6th floor. That place, where Tiamat had slumbered for 2 centuries. But when he awoke, it wasn't Aya standing before him. It was someone else. A massive figure clad in golden fur, brutish face marked by crimson sclera and gleaming golden irises, Monkey Spanner, the Beastman ape. Aya bit down hard on the cloth draped across her chest. That monkey. That filthy monkey was the first to greet him after 200 years of slumber. Unforgivable. She trembled with fury. To her, being the first wasn't everything, but to be the first to welcome him back from his long sleep, that role should have belonged to her alone. If it had been a female NPC, she might have used her submaster authority to unleash something far darker than a mere prank. But Monkey Spanner was male. And a beastman ape at that. That much soothed her jealousy. HMPH. Very well. I'll forgive you. You did die for him, after all, and your death brought about his awakening. For that, I'll be magnanimous. Draping herself back into her seat, Aya smiled smugly, as though she had just passed a merciful judgment. A plush armchair appeared beneath her as she sat, soft cushions embracing her body. Her sealed eyes turned once again toward Tiamat. She watched his figure move across the first floor. Slowly, her stern frown melted back into a tender smile. Wherever he went, whatever he did, so long as he remained within Shinshi, her gaze would always follow him. For all eternity. Yes, my master. All that we are belongs to you. Do as you will. Even if you should one day find it necessary to expend me, this Aya's heart for you will never change. Her lips curved into a radiant smile, unchanging, unwavering, as she whispered devotion to her master. A convenience store. Wait, my master, you're eating the cheap processed food. Ah, if it's cooking you want, I can do it. I cook very well, I could have made your first meal, your. Her voice cracked as the projection showed Tiamat happily munching on instant convenience store food, smiling contentedly. Aya slid from her chair to the cold floor, collapsing with a look of despair. 55. In the City Forsaken by the Gods 1. Chapter 55. In the City Forsaken by the Gods 1. In general, Yggdrasil's item categories began with lowest grade, and were divided into 9 tiers in total. Lowest, low, medium, high, highest, legacy, relic, legendary, divine. Of these, up through highest grade items were treated as normal, or magic items, while anything from legacy upward was considered special items, also called rare or unique. Naturally, one of the greatest joys in any RPG is the collection of such items. Whether for hunting, exploration, adventure, or dungeon conquest, equipment and consumables were always essential. Players spared no effort in researching ways to collect them. There were 3 primary ways to obtain items in Yggdrasil. 1. Monster drops. Defeating monsters would yield data crystals, customizable fragments containing the item's properties. The item's actual stats were bound to the crystal itself. By applying a visual template and combining the right materials, one could create a complete item. This allowed players great freedom in crafting appearances and even naming their gear. 2. Crafted items. If a player or NPC possessed a production-related class, they could use unique skills to craft equipment. This was closer to smithing or metallurgy than simple alchemy. Raw materials had to be gathered, processed, and shaped into items, with data crystals serving only as supplementary reagents. The process was labor-intensive, requiring long crafting times and manual input, which discouraged most players. Still, eccentric few thrived in it, and over time, knowledge spread enough that legendary and even divine-grade crafted items began to appear. 3. Quest or event rewards. Many quests granted gold, consumables, or equipment. Rarely, hidden one-time quests could yield high-rarity drops, top-tier data crystals, or even completed high-grade gear. Likewise, large-scale events often awarded powerful classes or items, sometimes to the point of breaking game balance. In Yggdrasil's later years, the flood of gambling-style events and cash items became notorious. Beyond the ordinary item scale lay those that transcended it, world items, also called world-class items. These were the officially recognized hidden pieces, items that could never be made through normal drops or crafting. Instead, they were born of special hunts, unique conditions, or singular quests. Across the entire map of Yggdrasil, there were fewer than 200 of these, even counting event distributions, no more than 250 in total. Their power and options were so overwhelming that they shattered normal game balance. Some, like mid-tier world items, rivaled divine-class gear focused in one direction. The strongest among them, however, known as the 20, possessed the ability to literally alter server data. In fact, when 2 of the 20 were once used simultaneously, GMs had to personally intervene, adjust the database, and publicly apologize to the player base. World items were thus regarded as developer-approved cheat codes. Not every world item was a weapon of mass destruction. Most were useful and devastating in battle, but some had completely different purposes. One example was the Tarnhelm of Metamorphosis. Classified as a head accessory, it could be worn by any race, alignment, class, or size, and granted a single effect, the ability to change one's appearance. Unlike the 9th tier spell Greater Transform or Magical Disguise gear, the Tarnhelm altered not just outward appearance but the system-recognized race and gender of the wearer. And yet, stats, racial levels, and class levels remained untouched. No penalties. No drawbacks. It was the ultimate disguise. Despite this, it was widely considered a failed world item, mockingly called World LOL, or World for fashionistas. It offered perfect defense and durability, and even allowed the wearer to make gear invisible, but provided nothing beyond its transformation function. Most players saw no reason to waste their valuable head slot on what amounted to a toy, when normal disguise magic or items sufficed. You couldn't copy world items anyway, so espionage was off the table. At best, it was good for amusing temporary transformations. But once Tiamat obtained it, everything changed. The evaluation of the Tarnhelm shifted dramatically. He was now outside the heavenly stem chamber, savoring the city of Shinsi. Junashi. Shinsi. It didn't matter anymore. If everyone called it Shinsi, then so be it. Since both his outfit and face were new to anyone seeing him, when he stepped into a convenience store, picked up a few things, and walked up to the counter, the clerk blinked and asked, "Are you one of the newly registered citizens?" He casually nodded and handed over the guild-issued card. The moment she saw it, her face went as white as a sheet, her body trembling as though struck with a seizure. Why? He wondered, before belatedly realizing. He had given her the guildmaster's exclusive black card. Shish. You understand, right? Yes, yes. It's, the infinite, eternal, glory of, th. That's enough. Forget it. After finishing his purchase and stepping out, he heard a thunk and turned back, only to see the clerk slamming her head against the counter. Sliding down to the floor, she seemed determined to erase her memory by force. Perhaps I should apologize later. Still, this item is just too convenient for me. The Tarnhelm of Metamorphosis, one of the 5 remaining, now 4, world items in Shinshi. It was the only one he could truly call his. One had already been used up, originally guild property, but impulsively consumed on the server's final day. But this was his alone, purchased at enormous cost, a possession he had personally earned. Its ability was exactly as described, transformation. No restrictions, no penalties. The effect lasted until the item was unequipped. That meant even Tiamat's true body, the absurdly massive dragon, could, with Tarnhelm equipped, be altered into the form of a small humanoid child. Which was, in fact, what he currently appeared as. He had half wondered whether world items would still function properly in this new world. To his astonishment, they worked flawlessly, without even the slightest diminishment. Even something as simple as a few cans of beer and a handful of snacks left him completely satisfied. In dragon form, such things wouldn't have even registered, not even a tingle of sensation. As expected of Tarnhelm. As expected of a world item. Perfect. Truly worthy of being his most treasured possession, it had not betrayed his trust. With this disguise, unless it was Monkey Spanner or Aya who had seen the transformation, no one would ever guess his identity. Well, except for that poor clerk, who had refused, unfortunately for her, the dubious honor of being the third. As for the Shinshi World Engine, forget it. Its power was absurd. Adding in the special functions made it even more so. But saddled with an NPC like that, back in Yggdrasil, he had thought of her as nothing more than a decorative doll. Who could have predicted that, once brought into this world and given intelligence, an NPC would change so drastically? Loyalty and devotion were good, yes, but what was with that big data nonsense? What on earth had happened to Aya over those 200 years? Come to think of it, even though I made her submaster, I only gave her the guild item manager and observer authorities. No other permissions. The thought made Tiamat's spine run cold. That would mean, she had spent 200 years locked inside the heavenly stem chamber, seeing Shinsi only through the world engine, and never leaving that space. The more he considered it, the colder his thoughts grew. He had mocked her for becoming strange, but wasn't the true culprit himself. He had been the one who created her. The one who confined her to that chamber. The one who restricted her authority. Cold sweat began pouring down his back. Should he go there immediately, drop to his knees in apology? The other high priests at least had the freedom to act, to make decisions of their own. But Aya had nothing. She had been sealed in that room for 2 centuries, unable to leave. The more he thought about it, the more crushing the guilt became. Even the kindest soul, if locked away in isolation for months, could not be guaranteed to remain the same. Hadn't there been old films, where an ordinary man was imprisoned for years, only to emerge consumed by vengeance, reborn as a terrifying human weapon? And Aya, not months. Not decades. 2 full centuries. Yes, she could see Shinsi through the world engine, but her body had remained locked in that chamber, unable to step outside. And now he dared to call her strange. To call her insufferable. Every word of complaint boomeranged back on him, unbearable. I'll have to apologize. This was nothing but self-inflicted karma. If she had fallen, or twisted, the blame was entirely his. Perhaps she had been pure, once. Perhaps, when she first descended into this world, she had been nothing more than the innocent, mischievous angel he had originally designed. But 2 centuries of solitary confinement had warped her into what she was now. Yes, he even remembered writing it into her settings. Pure, mischievous, playful. That playful angel had become a terrifying entity citing big data, and it was all his fault. The more he thought about it, the more frightened he became of remaining in Shinsi. Every corner of the city was under Aya's gaze. Even now, she was likely watching him through the world engine, smiling in that sealed chamber, as she had been for 200 years. Yes, he would apologize. But later. For now, guilt was overwhelmed by fear. And so, gripped by dread and guilt alike, Tiamat chose not to teleport back to the heavenly stem chamber. Instead, he warped to the outermost edge of the first layer, the only passage leading to the surface, and fled Shinsi. His body was small, but still infused with a dragon's power, allowing him to move swifter than the wind. He tore past the outer gate before the guards could even react. What was that? Did someone just leave? No, nothing happened. Right. Why? Nothing happened. The startled gatekeepers, bewildered by the sudden escape, quickly fell under a command and abandoned any thought of reporting it. They convinced themselves nothing had happened. And somewhere across Shinsi, the faint sigh of disappointment echoed like a ghostly after sound, before vanishing into the air. Thus, Shinsi remained, as always, peaceful, with nothing out of the ordinary. 56. In the City Forsaken by the Gods 2. Chapter 56. In the City Forsaken by the Gods 2. In the very heart of the 5th layer of Shinshi stands a towering spire. This is the office of Drake, the chief high priest of Shinshi, and the central hub where the affairs of the entire city are gathered and managed. Every day, dozens of reports requiring final review land on his desk. As Shinshi expanded, the workload only grew heavier. Fortunately, since the succession crisis of the chief high priest decades ago, the other priests have lightened Drake's burden. Thanks to them, he no longer has to endure backbreaking hours of labor. Still, as the highest authority, the weight of paperwork and decisions remains immense. At least, unlike in the past, his days now allow regular hours, arriving and leaving on time, a small mercy in his otherwise endless duties. Yet today, as always, Drake sat in silent anguish. Why hasn't there been any word? Drake, the Dragon High Priest, was in the eyes of the world the supreme ruler of Shinshi, ranked first in power while the god slumbered. A single word from him could mobilize tens of thousands of citizens and rally thousands of soldiers. To the people of Shinshi, that was an undeniable fact. But those who knew the truth also knew, Drake's mighty horns, scales, wings, and aura of command were nothing but a facade. He himself knew this well. Though he bore the title of supreme ruler, his authority was only that of a stand-in, worse, a stand-in for another stand-in. To put it bluntly, he was little more than a figurehead. He issued orders, and they were obeyed. But the true power behind those commands was not his charisma. Nor had he even been chosen by the priests themselves. He had been placed in this role almost forcibly. 200 years ago, when Shinshi first fell into this new world, it was not Drake who led it. The one who guided Shinshi and commanded its every move was the sole being personally created by the god himself, the Miko of the gods, Aya, who gazed upon the entire guild. With our Lord in eternal slumber, we cannot allow the guild to fall into chaos. By the rights of submaster passed down from him, and as administrator of the guild weapon, I command you all, obey my orders. Though Aya could not leave the chamber as the observer, and though God's command forbade her from direct contact with the outside world, she was still submaster and the guild weapons administrator. There were other beings of equal or even greater strength, but none could oppose her. With the Lord asleep and every player long gone from the guild known as the Zodiac, who could resist the submaster's authority? By that power, she appointed the 12 high priests as her aides, set the 3 governors and other officials as her hands and feet, and governed Shinshi in his stead. Under her rule, the NPCs marched in perfect order. It was she, and she alone, who crushed the great upheaval 170 years ago. Many citizens believed it was the 12 high priests who saved them, but in truth, they had only followed her orders like extensions of her will. She watched quietly, then ended the crisis in an instant, dividing God's people from the kingdom's people. Though the resistance was fierce, none could disobey her. For those born of the guild system, bound by divine authority, Aya's word was absolute. And yet, even with such control, the great exodus occurred. She had not foreseen it. Neither the god's command, nor guild law, nor royal decree could restrain those first-generation beings who were born outside the system's influence. Who could have imagined such a thing? Aya, who perceived all within the guild, had never realized that the first generation stood beyond the system's grasp. It was from that moment she began to let go of her iron grip. From this day forth, I shall withdraw from managing the zodiac. What? But why? The zodiac that fell into this world has too many uncertainties. I believe the laws and factors unique to this world interfere beyond my control. Thus, I must conclude that I no longer have the ability to manage or oversee Shinshi. From this moment, I stepped down as administrator. As the observer, it was overreach for me to act as manager to begin with, so relinquishing that role is the correct course. But with the Lord still asleep, who else but you could possibly govern Shinshi? You will. Excuse me. Through the shimmering projection, Aya's cold, emotionless gaze fell squarely on Drake. Flustered, he failed to respond properly, an error that would prove irreversible. To govern a guild bound by so many unknowns, we must test an imperfect ruling structure. Therefore, effective immediately, I appoint you as Chief High Priest, the acting head of Shinshi. From now on, you shall devote yourself wholly to Shinshi's welfare. Right after declaring this, Aya carried out her final adjustments. She officially changed the guild's name from Zodiac to Shinshi, and spread the creed that the sleeping lord was now to be worshipped as god. From that day onward, the 12 acolytes bore the title of High Priest. Under the 12 priests, the 3 governors, and other executives, the city of God was born. For Drake, that was the beginning of a long nightmare. With the title of Chief High Priest, every duty once managed by Aya was dumped on him. Unlike Aya, who was directly linked to the guild weapon world engine and could rely on its computational support, Drake had only his own mind to shoulder it all. The result was hellish days of endless labor. Had he been utterly incompetent, he might have thrown it all aside and fled. But unfortunately, Drake was capable enough to take responsibility. So he tried, and kept trying, to bear the crushing burden. Yet compared to Aya, who was effectively the guild itself, Drake's abilities were hopelessly lacking. Worse still, Aya had the system-backed authority of submaster. Drake, on the other hand, was merely appointed by Aya, not by the guild master himself. His legitimacy was tenuous at best, and access to the management console was virtually barred to him. As an important NPC, he technically had access rights, but the console was located in the throne hall, currently sealed off since the Lord's slumber. The only option left was to rely on Aya herself, the one being permanently connected to the guild system through the guild weapon. Without her help, he was powerless. Please, at least return to assist again. Return. I have never left. I remain where I belong. This is my place. You know that's not what I mean. Of all people, you shouldn't be twisting words. Enough. My duty, given by the Lord, is to observe. I had no right to interfere in guild management in the first place. Are you suggesting you would disobey the Lord's command? Never. I would never dare harbor such a thought. Then return to your role and fulfill it. And so, Drake was dismissed from the chamber like a child sent away. He tried returning several more times, but each visit ended worse than the last, until Aya, calling it just a prank, used her submaster authority to forcibly eject him. After that humiliation, he stopped visiting her altogether. Buried under an avalanche of duties, Drake eventually grew desperate to pass the burden on to anyone at all. His sincerity was evident in the fact that he didn't abandon his post entirely, but sought another to shoulder the load. Isn't there anyone who can take this role from me? Oh. Then what about me? Monkey Spanner? Well, whatever. Fine. From now on, you're the chief high priest. You're number 1. That means you also bear all responsibility. Yes. I'm the chief high priest now. Good. Then I'll rest. Do well, Monkey Spanner. Don't worry, leave it to me. And thus came about one of the strangest episodes in Shinshi's history, later remembered as the Revolt of the Monkey. Looking back, Drake could almost feel grateful. He had been so cornered at the time that even those 3 short days of rest felt like paradise, sweet, quiet, and blissful. But it didn't last. On the 3rd day, Monkey Spanner was arrested for dereliction of duty and thrown into the zoo. Without Drake present, the others convened and, by unanimous vote, declared him chief high priest once again. The news struck him like lightning, and the shock was so great that Drake regressed into near childlike protest. No. I don't want to go back there. Drake clenched his teeth. Drake, for Shinshi's sake, you must take up the role again. Get lost, you demons. You call yourselves comrades. Aren't you ashamed? Ahem. He cursed, threw tantrums, nearly broke into tears, and at one point almost resorted to violence. In the end, it took Mary's shock therapy to snap him back to his senses. Thus, Drake was dragged, kicking and screaming, back into the seat of Chief High Priest. If he were honest, part of him had hoped that if things went far enough, Aya might step back in to take over Shinshi again. But she never once involved herself. She must have seen everything from her vantage point as observer, yet she didn't lift a finger. Perhaps out of guilt, the other priests eventually began helping him shoulder the burden, easing his load considerably. Still, Drake never forgot those 3 blissful days of freedom. One day, he swore, he would cast this crushing responsibility onto someone else, permanently. And now, one of those heavy responsibilities was tormenting him again. That damned monkey spanner, what on earth is he doing out there, that he hasn't reported back? The scheduled check-in time passed hours ago. Anyone sent beyond Shinshi's borders was required to maintain regular contact, both to prove their safety and their loyalty. Branch heads among the Shinshi citizens reported through subordinates, but as Monkey Spanner was a priest, it fell on Drake himself to oversee his reports. The duty was absolute. Even Monkey Spanner, rowdy, reckless, and addicted to pranks, had never trifled with it. Which made his silence all the more troubling. For over 150 years, while managing Dragon's Dream outside the city, he had almost never missed a check-in. And when he had, it was only due to errors or delays, never negligence. But this time, hours had passed. No word. No contact. Why is it always you, damn monkey? Everyone else who served as branch leaders has already returned safely, yet only you vanish like this. Drake let out a long, heavy sigh. It was inevitable, something had gone wrong. No one simply forgot a mandatory contact. His tired mind spun, stitching fragments of possibility into a single conclusion. Could it be an external player faction? His weary eyes snapped wide. Yes, it was possible. During his last check-in, Monkey Spanner had mentioned a group called Darkness noticing his scouts and showing suspicious interest in Dragon's Dream. Darkness was already suspected by the priestly council of ties to actual player groups. If they were watching, then Dragon's Dream might be in danger. You fool. Why meddle in such matters? But Drake, if they're a threat to Shinshi, we need more intel. Silence. Did it never occur to you that your meddling itself could put Shinshi at risk? Enough. The council has already decided. All external connections will be severed. Wrap things up and return at once. Do you understand? TCH. Fine. Reluctant though he sounded, Drake should have pressed him harder. Given him a sterner warning. Perhaps even kept the line open. Instead, he had let it end there. And now, silence. If Monkey Spanner had truly run into danger outside, what excuse could he possibly give the other priests? Drake shut his eyes tightly, his worry weighing heavy. That was when the door slammed open. Oi, Drake. I'm back. Drake's head shot up. You damn monkey. 57, In the City Forsaken by the Gods 3. Chapter 57. In the City Forsaken by the Gods 3. A sharp snap rang in Drake's head the moment his patience broke, followed instantly by his fist slamming into Monkey Spanner's face. Die, you damned monkey. Wah. Hey, wait. You skipped your report, had me worried sick, then just waltz in here with a, hey, I'm back. You little, let's die together. His fist gleamed with power. Dragonic aura. IV crackled around him, the Dragonkin's exclusive skill surging with buffed force. The fact he'd stopped at stage 4, instead of unleashing the full maximized tier, was the only proof Drake hadn't lost his sanity completely. Still, that was enough. His blow tore through Monkey Spanner's defense, crushing his face like a dented tin can. The monkey man flipped backward, face caved in, only for it to snap back to normal midair, just in time for another punch to warp it all over again. Hold on, I said I had a reason. My fist is the only reason you need. Take it. Wham, wham, crack, smash, og. For a while, Monkey Spanner's pained screams echoed through the office. Luckily, or unluckily, the chamber had been soundproof to withstand Drake's frequent fits of hysteria. No one outside ever heard the carnage. Eventually, Drake's rage cooled. Sighing, he brewed tea. The dragon-engraved porcelain set, the carefully measured steeping, the graceful pour, this was no ordinary tea break. It was a full tea ceremony, practiced to perfection. Sit. Have some tea first. We'll talk after. Monkey Spanner, face still sore and twitching, grumbled. After you've beaten me half dead, now you offer tea, fine. Despite his complaints, he sipped carefully, savoring the fragrance with surprising delicacy for his hulking frame. Drake's skill in tea was well known among the priests. Over 150 years of practice had elevated his craft to the level of a master. The flavor was exquisite, calming even his own fury. It was ironic. On the outside he looked like a mighty dragon, horned, scaled, and fierce. But instead of a warrior's brutality, his true release lay in the quiet ritual of tea. 2 centuries ago, when he was first brought into this world as one of Dragon King Varan's creations, Drake had lived only for battle. Strength, honor, and glory on the battlefield had been everything. He and his armies had roared across the land at Varan's side. But when Shinshi fell into this world, and the role of chief high priest fell onto him by accident, everything changed. His days of wielding blades ended, now he wrestled with mountains of paperwork. Aya had once ruled Shinshi flawlessly, her AI-like iron control absolute. But once she withdrew, inefficiency took root, and bureaucracy returned. For Drake, that meant endless drudgery. At least Shinshi's advanced system spared him from drowning in literal paper, or else he might have collapsed ages ago. In the midst of that suffocating burden, tea became his escape, his lifeline. And so, while others trained or adventured, Drake perfected the art of brewing tea. After a century and a half, his skill surpassed that of any mortal master. Even other priests often visited him just for a cup during breaks. For a brief moment, Drake's office felt like a quiet tea pavilion, filled with the gentle fragrance of tea. Monkey Spanner's irritation faded, his mind calming as if soothed by the aroma. Truly, Drake's tea, honed through a century and a half of practice, had reached mastery. Yet, as he watched Drake tend carefully to a potted plant in the corner, a strange melancholy radiated from the dragon's broad back. Monkey Spanner broke into a nervous sweat. What are you staring at? Ah, nothing at all. He had thought Drake simply invited him here to rest. But rest, to Drake, meant brewing tea and watering flowers. The once proud warrior who had sworn never to return until every runaway was hunted down, where had that Drake gone? Now he wore suits instead of armor, wielded teapots instead of weapons, and spent his days fighting paperwork rather than foes. Monkey Spanner thought he'd changed a lot over the past 200 years, but maybe it was Drake who had changed the most. Better not mess with him again. The melancholy on Drake's back was far more terrifying than his fists. Monkey Spanner resolved then and there, he'd stop talking back and start obeying Drake's words without complaint. Soon, Drake returned, finished with his plants, and sat across from him. Taking a sip from his cooled cup, the dragon's slit pupil eyes narrowed sharply at the sweating monkey. So, what happened? Everything. From the beginning. Leave nothing out. Well, first off, I should probably say I died once. What? Crack. The teacup shattered in Drake's hand. The unconscious release of dragonic aura reduced porcelain to dust, tea dripping between his scaled fingers. Hey, Drake, calm down. I am calm. Fine. You're not joking. Go on. I can't remember everything, but I think I died and was resurrected today. My memories only go back 4, maybe 5 days. Why? In Yggdrasil there were no such side effects. I don't know. I'm the first one to die and come back in this world, aren't I? I see. Drake nodded grimly, then his eyes sharpened, glinting like blades. Monkey Spanner flinched under the piercing glare. So, who resurrected you? That would be, her. Her who? Speak plainly. The priestess. She brought me back. Resurrection. Yes, she had resurrected him. Out of the void, from the fragments of his broken self, she had drawn him back into existence. He remembered the vast eyes of crimson and gold burning in the darkness. He understood at once and bowed in reverence. He'd been given orders, explain, then wait. And so he obeyed, until Aya, the priestess, commanded him to leave the throne hall. He recalled asking her a single question. Priestess, did my death serve the god? Did it serve Shinshi? Yes, it did. Then that's enough for me. That had been enough. His life was given by the god. If his death had served Shinshi, he had no regrets. I see, so it was her. Drake's words cut short. In a sudden movement, he overturned the table and chairs, claws bared. Before Monkey Spanner could react, Drake had him by the throat. As if I'd believe that at face value, you damned monkey. Tell me the truth. For us, created beings, resurrection costs gold. 500 million for one of our kind. If that much gold had vanished from Shinshi's treasury, I'd have been notified instantly. So where did the gold come from? Answer me, Monkey Spanner. Who? No. What brought you back? Drake's blazing eyes bored into Monkey Spanner's trembling ones. The silence stretched, and just as Monkey Spanner opened his mouth in defeat, a voice cut through the air. Open corner bracket enough. That's far enough. Priestess. Lady Aya. Between them shimmered a translucent projection, the serene image of a white-winged angel, eyes closed, the holy priestess of Shinshi. Monkey Spanner gaped in shock at her sudden appearance, while Drake, after a pause, lowered his head in acknowledgement. Priestess, why? Open corner bracket because the conditions were met. Monkey Spanner's bewildered question was met with a mechanical reply, devoid of emotion. The command she had received from her god, her master, was simple: do not tell the other high priests. In other words, if they found out on their own, that was outside the command's scope. And so, when Monkey Spanner stood silently in the throne hall awaiting his lord's return, she released him using her submaster authority, ordering him to claim that she had performed the resurrection. Open corner bracket, you must never let it be discovered. Understood? Don't worry. When it comes to deception, this Monkey Spanner is a master. Open corner bracket, very well. I'll trust you. Of course, it was a lie. She didn't trust him in the slightest. The only one she trusted, revered, and loved with all her being was her lord. That was enough. That was everything. Which was why she gave him strict instructions before sending him out. She already knew he would run straight to Drake. She knew his flimsy excuse would crumble instantly. And that was precisely why the condition would be satisfied. She herself hadn't spoken a word. Thus, Aya had not technically revealed anything to Drake. Then, the reason you've appeared now, is it because he has awakened? Open corner bracket, correct. At least you live up to the title of High Priest. I see, then what must we do? Open corner bracket, nothing. The exchange between the two carried layers and spoken, hints of truths omitted. Monkey Spanner couldn't follow it, his confused gaze darted between them. Yet neither Aya nor Drake paid him the slightest attention anymore. Though only a holographic projection, Aya's voice was clear, her closed eyes an unchanging smile radiating something cold and mechanical. Open corner bracket, for the time being, nothing will change. Continue as you have until now. 58. In the City Forsaken by the Gods. 4. Chapter 58. In the City Forsaken by the Gods. 4. So, are you saying I may glimpse his will in your words? No, that was a foolish question. Please forget it. Open corner bracket, there's no need. This exchange will not be stored in any records. I appreciate your consideration. Drake bowed deeply. He bore no small grudge toward her. 150 years of resentment had piled up since she abandoned direct governance. But none of that mattered now. In the face of a divine return, all such grievances were meaningless. Before God's presence, old bitterness dissolved like frost in sunlight. He had neither the standing nor the authority to press the matter further. Of course, the ever-clueless monkey had to interrupt. Hey, would someone mind explaining what you're talking about? I can't follow a single word here. It doesn't matter if you don't understand, Drake began, then paused. No, since you've stumbled into this circle, perhaps you do need to know. Open corner bracket, is that really necessary? A simple prohibition on disclosure and movement would suffice. Aya's eyes never opened, yet Monkey Spanner felt her gaze pierce him through the hologram. The holy priestess of Shinshi was said to see all that transpired within the city. And when her unseen eyes fixed upon you, it meant you were truly being watched. Monkey Spanner trembled under the weight of that attention, sweat dripping freely. He understood enough. Whatever this was, it was dangerous. Very dangerous. And if it meant imprisonment, he wanted no part of it. Unless the god himself commanded it, he would resist with everything he had. Seeing his terror, Drake interceded. Lady Aya, this monkey's overdue contact has already unsettled our subordinates. He's due to return shortly. If we imprison him now, suspicion will spread. Open corner bracket, a valid point. Very well, he will not be confined. But surely you understand why I cannot simply let him roam free. He is far too clumsy at concealing the truth. I disagree. He may be a fool, but unless one already knows the circumstances, his bluster won't give him away. Yes, matters concerning him clearly rattle him, but with minimal exposure, it should suffice. Ha! Monkey Spanner exhaled with relief. Even if he didn't understand half of what they were saying, at least he wasn't about to be locked up. He vowed, once again, to obey Drake to the letter from now on. But Drake pressed further, his voice low and stern. Tell me this, why hide it? You've let me glimpse his return, yet you forbid the others to know. For 2 centuries they've clung to their loyalty, waiting only for his awakening. Concealing this truth feels wrong. Open corner bracket simulations run through the 12 heavenly stems suggest that announcing his return now would be premature. More importantly, he himself commanded, do not tell the others. It pains me to twist his words in this way, but for his sake, preparations must be made. Drake froze. Did I hear you correctly? Are you admitting you circumvented his command? Open corner bracket your hearing is sound. Yes, I bent his order, within the limits of my authority, for his sake. Both Drake and Monkey Spanner gaped. For Aya, the flawless system incarnate, the submaster bound to the guild weapon, the one who once governed Shinchi with absolute precision, to admit openly that she had defied her god's command. It was unthinkable. Even Drake, who had changed over the centuries, could scarcely process it. She had always been a perfect, unbending law. To see her claim personal judgment now was terrifying. You've changed. Open corner bracket and so have you. 100 years ago, you were wailing, no. No. I won't go back. Like a frightened child. You may be more competent now, but all your charm is gone. Stop. That record, delete it, Lady Aya. Why in the world would you keep such a thing? Open corner bracket why not? I'd love to share it with everyone. Musical note. No. Please, stop. The once majestic high priest of Shinchi flailed helplessly, trying to claw away the holographic playback of his humiliating past. To all the world he was a dragonlord, a pillar of authority. Yet before Aya, he was little more than a toy. Only she could strip him down so easily, mocking him and calling him adorable. Monkey Spanner shrank into himself, deeply grateful that he wasn't the one caught in her games. Better to be ignored than noticed. At last Drake regained a measure of composure, gritting his teeth as he sat back down. You will erase it. Someday. Open corner bracket perhaps. We'll see. But let us return to the real matter, there is another reason I've withheld this from the others. And what is that? Open corner bracket the ones who killed Monkey Spanner. Her words dropped like a stone in the quiet chamber. Drake turned sharply toward the monkey, who scratched his head and gave a vacant look. Whether he remembered or not, the truth was clear. Someone had slain him, and that truth could not remain buried. Open corner bracket we have no data yet on what effects death and resurrection may have on beings like us in this world. So, whether Monkey Spanner's memory loss is a side effect of resurrection, or the result of something else, we cannot say for certain. Can't we test it? Open corner bracket on whom, exactly? Drake hesitated. If a subject is needed, I will volunteer. Open corner bracket rejected. Your role is far too vital to Shinchi. If you were to lose your memory, the administration of this entire city would falter. That point could be managed if you. Open corner bracket and then there is the matter of gold. Would you waste 500 million gold just for a single experiment? Shinchi's treasury is ample, yes, but it is not infinite. Remember, you are not the one earning it, the production classes are. Yes. Even so, both Drake and Monkey Spanner felt she had sidestepped the question. Surely, for Aya, temporarily covering Drake's duties would be nothing, but she refused. Why? Neither could read her mind, so both fell silent. Open corner bracket nor will I allow other citizens to be used as test subjects. Yes, our lives are gifts from him, and to be spent for his sake is no burden. But that does not make us disposable. And, do you not recall? It was you, not I, who decreed long ago that no living experiments would be done upon our people. Her words carried them back 170 years, to the time of schism, when Shinchi split its faithful from the kingdom folk. Back then, the council had raged over whether the divine blessing could justify using citizens as test subjects. A single life, for an answer, that is not a meaningless death, but a noble sacrifice. Nonsense. What citizen deserves to be cast away? You first, then. Now, calm yourselves, no violence. Control your emotions. The debate dragged on. Weeks, months, years. For 3 years they fought over it. In the end, a vote was held. Every citizen was asked to decide. The result was clear. Lives gifted by God cannot be squandered. Even the kingdom-born, who had once envied the divine favor, voted to protect life. For the first time in this other world, amid strife and division, they had acted like true people of reason. Yes. I let passion blind me. Forgive me, Lady Aya. Open corner bracket no forgiveness is needed. That moment left a deep impression even upon me. Efficiency might have said sacrifice one for knowledge. But never forget, our lives may have been granted by him, but they remain his property. Only he can measure their worth. Do you understand? Yes. I will remember those words. Open corner bracket you need not remember my words. More importantly, our discussion has strayed. In any case, experimentation is rejected. But while Monkey Spanner's missing memory leaves us no hard proof, we can draw conclusions about the enemy's strength. Specifically, open corner bracket consider Monkey Spanner's abilities. He is not the strongest among the commanders, but his overall evaluation is high. Particularly outside of direct confrontations, his adaptability makes him formidable. For him to die means only two things. Either the enemy was so powerful he had no chance to flee, or they had the means to utterly prevent his escape. Monkey Spanner gulped. It was true, if someone tried to catch him, it would be no easy task. He wasn't as powerful as Drake or Lion in head-to-head combat, but in irregular battles, he always had a chance. He was sure that if survival alone was the goal, even both of them together would not be able to kill him outright. And yet, he had died. Aya's logic was sound. Whoever had done it was beyond anything he could handle. Wait, hang on. I should say, I've been holding back. I've got plenty of tricks no one's seen yet. What you've seen isn't the full picture. Open corner bracket I am aware. You mean the legacies left to you by the great sage equal to heaven, do you not? Those were factored into my conclusion as well. Huh, how do you know that? Open corner bracket big data, of course. What the hell does that even mean? Monkey Spanner wilted like a wet rag, despairing that the powers he had kept hidden for 2 centuries were apparently nothing but an open book to her. Drake, however, ignored his collapse and pressed forward. Monkey Spanner's secret powers, gifts from the Creator, could always be dragged out later, if necessary, by throwing him into a cell. What mattered now was the unknown enemy. Then what do you estimate the enemy's strength to be? Open corner bracket strong enough to pose a real threat to Shinshi. If they could block Monkey Spanner's escape, they must have wielded at least a world item, or something on par with it. A world item. The words alone carried terrible weight. Artifacts of godlike power, capable of reshaping entire worlds. Once, when countless deities still roamed, many such relics had existed. But when the gods departed, most vanished with them. Drake knew that of all the 12's hoarded treasures, only 5 remained, 4, now. Each one was said to contain a world within itself. To face such a thing without one of equal rank was impossible. Yes, if a world item had been involved, Monkey Spanner's death finally made sense. His escape cut off, his resistance nullified, even his memory shattered after resurrection. Yes, perhaps even that could be traced back to the artifact's power. Drake's mind flooded with dozens of hypotheses, flickering and dying in an instant. Open corner bracket but hasty conclusions are dangerous. We know nothing of the enemy's true form. It may even be that Monkey Spanner stumbled upon them, was noticed, and silenced for it. Drake's eyes sharpened. Then if we trace Monkey Spanner's movements outside, perhaps we can identify them. Open corner bracket number. For now, that course of action is forbidden. Shinshi must not stir against the outside. Why? To Drake, the reasoning was simple. Dragon's dream still stood beyond. A splinter force, yes, but one of considerable size. If it had fallen, there would be traces. To follow those traces back should yield answers. But Aya had forbidden it. The longer we wait, the colder the trail becomes. Why forbid this? Open corner bracket because he is absent. What? Drake froze, mind racing over every word exchanged so far. Monkey Spanner's rambling, Aya's evasions, her sudden appearance. He had overlooked something fundamental. Don't tell me, he's left. Open corner bracket yes. Even now, our Lord walks outside. He may already have crossed the mountains by now. Musical note. Drake's roar split the chamber, an inarticulate cry of denial. The howl of a dragonkin who refused to comprehend what his own ears told him. His anguished bellow dragged with it his unconsciously triggered dragonic aura, filling the office with a storm of raging force. Monkey Spanner was flung into the wall like a ragdoll. Drake's cherished flowers and tea set shattered instantly. Aya, far away in the heavenly stem chamber, watched the scene through her projections. Eyes closed as always, lips curved in a serene smile, she savored his despair. 59. In the City Forsaken by the Gods 5. Chapter 59. In the City Forsaken by the Gods 5. It took several dozen minutes before Drake finally regained his composure. The reinforced chamber, built precisely for emergencies, had barely withstood the last traces of his lost restraint. The result? His office was utterly devastated, yet at least none of the uproar had leaked outside. Repairs would, of course, be necessary. Thankfully, the fifth layer's residential restructuring ability could restore everything quickly enough. And the expenses would be drawn directly from Drake's own account. After all, he had hardly touched it in the last 150 years, and his coffers were overflowing. A small deduction would hardly be noticed. But though Drake had calmed, true peace of mind was still far away. You of all people know what the outside is like right now. The Lord could be in danger. And why, exactly, would he be in danger? Because there are forces out there hunting us, obviously. And who knows that, aside from us? What? Drake's words faltered. Dangerous, that was what he had thought. Therefore the Lord, too, must be in danger. But when he stopped to think, was he really in danger? Let's review carefully. The hostile forces outside are, in all likelihood, targeting Dragon's Dream. Their goals are probably manpower, intelligence, and, this is speculation, resources. Unless a guild of city-scale power like ours had also descended into this world, it would take them years of trial and error to build the means to address such issues. Without the same conditions we enjoyed, even more so. That was true. The reason the 12, the Shinshi, had managed to establish Dragon's Dream so smoothly was not only their overwhelming strength and numbers. The circumstances outside had happened to align perfectly. It had taken years simply to gather information about the world. And luck had handed them a collaborator, Synopsis Vasion. With his guidance, they'd been able to create an external power base. Without his aid, Dragon's Dream would have been a mess of false starts and setbacks. Synopsis surely had his own designs, but that had always been part of the calculation. They each used the other. Aya had never revealed herself, she had built the alliance through the high priests. Thus was born an adventurer clan with 150 years of history. Now Dragon's Dream stood as a formidable outside force, its foundation solid, its reputation and information networks vast, its power undeniable. For a supposedly single group, it was almost too tempting a prize. Drake, you understand, don't you? That power was built for this very purpose. Yes, I do. Dragon's Dream was bait. The sharper among the officers must already have realized this. Dragon's Dream was bait to lure any external power, especially players, that might descend into this world. For newcomers, intelligence gathering would be a priority, and surely, they would notice and investigate this peculiar group called Dragon's Dream. Players, after all, were typically far stronger than this world's natives. That overwhelming power made them reckless. In turn, they would be noticed. At that point, the Shinshi would watch. If the strangers seemed approachable, they would exchange information and build ties, without ever revealing Shinshi itself. If not, they would cut the bait and disappear, leaving Dragon's Dream to be devoured while Shinshi remained safe. But the enemy reacted too quickly. Which means their side has a strategist of considerable talent, or at least someone highly skilled in intelligence gathering. Yes, if all had gone according to plan, Monkey Spanner would have returned safely. Yet now, with mere days left before his scheduled return, they struck so precisely. That suggests a scheme of no small cunning. Exactly. Which is why I now classify this incident as a direct threat to Shinshi, a Category A or higher crisis. Then doesn't that make it all the more reckless for the Lord to walk outside alone? Drake could already guess what Aya was trying to say. She was implying that the hostile forces only cared about Dragon's Dream, that the Lord himself was not their target. But that was only one possibility. What if Monkey Spanner had been captured, coerced into revealing secrets during that blank gap in his memory? What if the enemy already knew? Monkey Spanner's memory is incomplete. We cannot know what happened in that time. If items, magic, or skills forced him to spill secrets, what then? If that had happened, Monkey Spanner would not be here. What? Why not? Have you forgotten, Drake? It was I who insisted that one of the 12 attendants, one of the 12 high priests, always accompany outside operations. Do you think I would decree that without reason? From the beginning I told you, they are all bait. Recall it, Drake. 150 years ago, when we first built our external network, it was you who agreed to this plan. Aya's rebuke drove Drake's memory back into the distant past. A century and a half ago, even for a dragonkin like him, it was a long, long time. Digging through that haze was exhausting, yet the recollection returned. And once more, he found himself awed by Aya's capacity. Her mind, linked directly to the guild weapon, was no mere mortal intellect. Not everyone records and tracks everything like you, Lady Aya. You can't expect me to. I know. Which is why I go to the trouble of explaining. This counts as an explanation. Yes. Why? Any problem. Drake bit back the urge to shout, "Don't mock me, woman." He had endured her personality for a century and a half, but rarely had he spoken with her this long at once. The anger almost boiled over again. If not for his earlier outburst, he might well have snapped now. The mission given to a high priest was simple: carry false information in case of capture, flee if possible. Because if their minds were seized, whether priest or officer, the end result would be the same: Shinshi's secrets would be at risk. Then why insist it be a high priest at all? Why not any other officer? No. It matters precisely because it's a high priest. Even if their mind were subdued, an enemy would be unlikely to kill them. It's far more efficient to keep them alive. Quote, comma, exclamation mark. Are you saying they would brainwash them, turn them into allies? Of course. They're enemies. Why would they show respect? And we're speaking of a level 100 creation, holding a high position, armed with powerful items. Who wouldn't prefer to capture rather than destroy? That's why it holds meaning. But then the high priest would. That would indeed be the worst case scenario. Of course, there are ways to undo it. I won't explain those to you now, but know this: even if they were enslaved, there are means to break it. If she already had a method in mind, Drake's thoughts sparked. The worm in the lion's belly. Sacrificing flesh to cut the bone. Either way, or both, it would spell disaster for the enemy. In any case, the fact remains that Monkey Spanner died. Which proves he wasn't taken over. Meaning Shinshi's secrets were never revealed. If he had given them up and then been killed, that would mean a strategist beyond even my calculations is working against us. But even so, the Lord himself will never be in danger. He went out wearing the Tarnhelm. You could have said that from the start. The Tarnhelm, one of the Lord's constant possessions. A world item, the ultimate disguise, able to freely alter form and race. That Drake had not thought of it until now was proof of his mind dulling after 2 centuries, either to age, or the erosion of memory. But why mention it only now? Could she not have told him sooner? It seemed like you needed an explanation. And besides, the fact you didn't think of it is your problem, not mine. Musical note. GHH. In any case, there is no need to worry over the Lord. He is already aware of hostile forces beyond. If he chose to leave alone, then surely he had reason. You know as well as I do, it was his will. We cannot bind him. That may be so, but still. There's no need for such fear. He hasn't flown straight at the enemy. He merely wished to see this world with his own eyes for the first time. Though he has slept, he has been bound to us for 200 years. Why not set aside your worries for a moment, and instead look forward to his adventure? Adventure. To Drake, that word felt like something from a long-forgotten age. Since arriving in this world, his excursions outside had never been true adventures. At first, it was information gathering. Then it became the pursuit and punishment of deserters. After that, building power, managing it, and ruling Shinshi. Adventure, an exhilarating word, but one he had not touched in centuries. It lived only in the memories of Yggdrasil, and in the recollections of his creator, the Dragon King, who had sought adventure as well. Now then, Drake, return to your duties. Even now, the Lord is savoring his journey. Let us do the same, in our own way. Excuse me. What exactly? Leave the cleanup to yourself. Ah, when you have time, send Cha an invitation in Shinshi's name. Do not explain why. Understood. Flash. The hologram vanished. She was surely still watching Shinshi, but her sight would no longer rest here. Drake let out a long sigh. Truly, she was willful, impossibly so. And Cha, why him? An invitation now, of all times. For what purpose? Could it be for the Lord? If so, nothing good would come of it. Drake found himself, for once, pitying Sindorux. Theirs was a long acquaintance. Though they were called friends after all these years, Drake knew well that Cha kept his distance. Outwardly, they might look close, but in truth, it was nothing more than a partnership, a relationship of mutual use. 150 years of give and take, and in truth, it was Cha who had gained the most. If the Lord discovered this, if he saw how Cha had treated Shinshi all this time, Drake knew there would be no kindness shown. That was why he felt even more pity. If only they had shown even a little sincerity to one another. But regret means nothing now. And, as an added blow, Drake's own office. The shattered furniture, the broken fixtures, and Monkey Spanner sprawled amidst it all. His eyes rolling in dazed circles. Since none of this could be made public, Drake would have to clean it up alone. Just thinking of the scattered paperwork made his vision darken. Among the debris, he saw the remains of his cherished plants and tea set, ground to dust and mixed with the wreckage. Despair and sorrow welled up, and a single tear slipped from the corner of the dragon's scaled eye. It was because of that grief that Drake failed to notice the faint explosion among the rubble. A few dozen meters away, in another chamber on the 5th floor. The room was filled with dolls, cushions, and frills. Round, puffy dolls. Round, puffy cushions. But their colors did not match the softness of their shapes. Everything was dyed in gradients of crimson and black. Though decorated to appear cozy, the clashing palette gave the whole space an unsettling air. And perhaps it was no coincidence that all those decorations, those dolls, those designs, were made not for the room's master herself, but to reflect someone else entirely. Dragons. Dragons, dragons, dragons. From the plush toys to the ornaments, every corner of the room was saturated with dragons. And in the center, on an oversized bed, the room's eccentric mistress rolled about. Ho, I knew it. When Monkey Spanner's report was late, I suspected something, but that it would be such a grave matter. As expected, it was I who foresaw it. Good thing I kept watching. 100 years of patience has not been wasted. The soundless laugh that escaped her lips was muffled against her pillow. She dared not speak aloud. Every inch of this city, of these structures, was under her surveillance. Even if her gaze was not fixed here, her eyes saw everything. Not even this room was safe. One could call the entire city the heart of the enemy's lair. A moment's carelessness would be unforgivable. Still, it is vexing to know that he has awakened, yet my first sight of him is neither his voice nor his form. Should I have thrown caution aside, defied that woman's gaze, and forced my way in, number. To face her directly without being certain of meeting him would be suicide. If I cannot present myself before him in person, victory is impossible. HMPH. What to do? That woman, Aya, was far too powerful. Just the thought of opposing her brought waves of despair. No matter how deeply she buried herself into her soft, plush bed, as long as she remained in this city she could never rebel against Aya. None could, save one. But I will not give up. His rightful consort is me. No one else. It will be I, and I alone. That woman must be smirking even now, whispering that his true consort has already been chosen. Fox of a woman. I will pierce that arrogance. Once I seize his affection, no stratagem, no scheme will matter. At his side lies the true seat of power, above all others. If I claim that place, then even she will be left to stew in nothing but her jealousy. Wahahaha. Her delusions spilled forth, reckless ambition surging straight toward her goal. She wanted to shout her intent aloud, but the truth was laughably girlish. For all her words, she had nothing to do with sorcery. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to call it another kind of magic. As someone once said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. For she wielded technology capable of producing phenomena that rivaled sorcery itself. It might not fit the cutesy decor of her room, but every machine in Shinchi ultimately lay under her control. With the supplies I smuggled from outside, the pure sciences untouched by magic, the most basic, primitive forms of radio transmission, I have finally done it. I escaped her gaze. Escaped the guild system. That woman might already know, of course, pretending otherwise is exactly the sort of trick she would play. But in a crisis like this, she won't simply ignore the fact that I saw it. Ha! She rolled across her bed as if sleep-talking, her tail swishing from side to side. A century of hiding, of masking myself from her eyes, and at last, I have my chance. I cannot waste it. Patience, patience, even if I cannot surpass her yet, I stand above the others. That smug Mary most of all. Slowly, steadily, I will climb until at last I can topple Aya. I have waited 200 years already. What is a few more? I can wait forever. Unable to hold back her laughter, she buried her face into her pillow. The wolf ears atop the head of Hattie twitched uncontrollably with excitement. The proxy of the city of God. Name: Drake. Titles: 5th seat of the 12 high priests, Dragon High Priest, Chief High Priest, Proxy of Supreme Authority, Supreme Administrator, Representative in the name of God. Residence: Central Tower, 5th layer. Alignment: Good Karma Score: 150. Height: 202 centimeters. Total level: 100. Racial levels: Dragonkin 10, Dragon Demon 10, others, total 50 levels. Class levels. Dragon Knight 10, Sword Saint 10, Dual Blade 5, Dragon Marshal 5, others total 50 levels. Details. Drake fills the hardship role of Shinshi. Officially ranked number 1 in political authority, but in practice only the third most influential. Still, he holds undeniably high office. He is capable of excelling in both combat and administration, yet even he once lost control under the crushing burden of tasks that only the supercomputer like AI could manage flawlessly. To this day, he remains unable to free himself from that position. A pitiable man. One of his two main weapons, the demon-slaying sword and the true dragon sword, had once been taken outside as part of Dragon's Dreams relics, but has since been reclaimed. Among the 12 high priests, his overall combat power is ranked unchallenged at number 1. The wolf who loves with all her strength. Name: Hattie. Titles: 11th seat of the 12 high priests, Dog High Priest, Director of Shinshi's Department of Technological Development, Chief Engineer. Residence: Wolf Mansion, 5th layer, located as close as possible to the central tower. Alignment: neutral right pointing arrow. Evil karma score: 100. Height: 150 centimeters. Total level: 100. Racial levels: Lycanthrope 10, Elder Lycanthrope 10, others total 35 levels. Class levels: Engineer 10, Mechanic 10, Gunner 10, Pilot 10, Stalker 5, others total 65 levels. Details. A female wolf beastkin, she openly vies for the position of official consort. Her overall combat ranking among the high priests is 3rd. 60. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 1. Chapter 60. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 1. The Azerlija mountain range, the natural barrier separating the Re-Estais kingdom and the Baharuth Empire, was both a gift of nature and a treasury of life. Its sheer vastness sheltered an incredible variety of creatures, ranging from insects and small animals to ferocious beasts, demihumans, and dangerous monsters, all thriving under the cycle of nature. But for comparatively weak humans, this was an exceedingly dangerous land. On rare occasions, Slashandburn farmers or hidden human villages could be found on the lower plains, but they lived in constant fear. They had little means of defending themselves, and at any moment could fall prey to aerial beasts such as peritons, harpies, itsumades, or giant eagles that swept down from above. Adventurers sometimes formed parties to hunt monsters or gather rare herbs in the mountains, but their chances of success were slim. The range was simply too vast, and unexpected threats lurked everywhere. Take the killer ape, for instance, a monster with an estimated threat level of 70. It looked like a half-flayed monkey with exposed muscle, but its strength was far beyond any simian. Even an ordinary specimen had 20 times the strength of a human, and evolved individuals could surpass even that. With its grip alone, it could crush stone and dent steel. But its real danger lay not in its power. This monster traveled in troops. Normally, they gathered in small clans of dozens, but on rare occasions, a unique specimen would arise and unite them into massive hordes numbering in the hundreds. At that scale, they became a force strong enough to rival an army, even capable of destroying entire towns or cities once they marched beyond the mountains. In short, monsters were almost always stronger than humans. Normally, humans had no choice but to cower in fear before them, that was common sense. But not always. Crackling. A great sword wreathed in lightning cleaved through the neck of a charging killer ape. Each droplet of blood that sprayed into the air carried a spark of electricity, scattering arcs in every direction. And it wasn't just once. With every swing of the thick blade, moving at impossible speed, killer apes were hewn apart, their bodies severed and flung high into the air. The cross-sections revealed layers of muscle still twitching feebly, as if unaware they had already been severed. Martial art, Azure Thunder Slash. Through the chaos, the swordsman sprinted. A dash, then another strike. Blue lightning burst forth with each slash, and more killer apes collapsed. But where 2 or 3 fell, others rushed in to fill the gap. A horrified man nearby shouted desperately. Hey! A little help over here. Shut up. You help me. Fire arrow. Whoosh. Screech. Burning arrows of flame streaked through the air, piercing killer apes and setting their bodies ablaze. They shrieked hideously as they burned alive, but once again, their places were immediately taken by others. The robed, slender man loosed the spell with a grimace. After so many slain, there was still no end in sight. Their stamina and mana remained, but if things continued like this, they might not last. And then, countless lances of blue light pierced the horde all at once. Hey! Colton. Rohaim. If you two still have enough breath to whine, then help this old man out instead. Martial art, piercing spear. WHNNNNK. 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 The bearded middle-aged warrior hurled spear after spear, each one blazing with blue energy. The spectral lances tore through the killer apes, punching coin-sized holes that pierced clean through their bodies. Within seconds, dozens of monsters lay bleeding and motionless on the ground. You're the one doing most of the work here, Master Dean. Don't call me, Master. I'm still in my prime, you brats. But you just called yourself an old man. Swoosh. The rebuttal died instantly when a streak of blue energy zipped past the mage Rohaim Randolph's ear and blew a hole through the skull of a killer ape sneaking up behind him. He immediately shut his mouth tight. The middle-aged warrior grinned. What was that you said? Dean Crowheadon, the spear general, leader of the Adamantite-ranked adventurer party Dragon's Dream, stared at him with both warmth and menace. Under that gaze, Rohaim quickly looked away and feigned ignorance. Did I say something just now? Hey, I don't mind sharp-tongued youngsters. Now, onward. With that, he skewered another killer ape clean through and hurled its body aside. Even at his age, the man's bulging arms rippled with muscle as he bellowed. But seriously, why the hell are we in this mess? Who thought it was a good idea to meet in a place like this? Don't ask me. Ask him. I told you we should have met somewhere else. Hey, Colton. You agreed to meet here too because it might be safer. I don't know what you're talking about. You bastard. Even as they bickered and hurled insults, their formation never wavered. Together, they stood against the horde of killer apes. This was no ordinary battle. Facing down hundreds of monsters with a threat level exceeding 70 would normally be suicide, but these were no ordinary men. They were well beyond the realm of normal humanity. By any measure, they had stepped into the domain of heroes. They were members of Dragon's Dream, an Adamantite-rank adventurer party under the great noble house of the Re-Estais kingdom, also named Dragon's Dream. Just 5 members, but each one considered either a hero in their own right, or a warrior who surpassed even that. And the reason they were locked in bloody combat with a swarm of killer apes here, of all places. Of course, it was because of a mission. Or rather, it had been a mission. Damn it. I'll buy us some time, prep the big one. Yes sir. Hey, mind giving me a hand over here? Shut it, Colton. Big strike incoming. Martial art, linked barrage spear. In an instant, Dean unleashed dozens of splitting thrusts, a storm of blue stabs that tore into the killer apes. Dozens of monsters were downed in a single strike. The sheer devastation stunned the blood-frenzied beasts into hesitation, their frenzied charge faltering for the first time. This was the reason Dean Crowheadon was called the Spear General. His martial art allowed him to unleash a volley of attacks equivalent to a squadron's worth of soldiers all by himself. He rarely used it in chaotic melees due to the muscle strain it left afterward, but here, with reliable comrades at his side, he could cut loose. Ha! Lightning fang slash. Into the gap Dean created, Colton struck. Shards of lightning burst from his blade, paralyzing the killer apes. It wasn't enough to kill them outright, but their muscles seized, locking their bodies for a few precious seconds. That opening was all their mage needed. Fire cyclone. Screech. A roaring vortex of flame engulfed the paralyzed monsters, consuming them in an inferno. The killer apes writhed and shrieked, their bodies charring in the whirlwind of fire. This was the signature spell of Rohaim Randolph, the Hydeir caster known as Sky Tempest. Though his specialty was flame magic, his true strength lay in combining it with wind. Fire feeds on air, and when the two elements intertwined, the destructive power exceeded its tier. That was how he earned the name Sky Tempest, a man who dreamed of one day burning the very heavens themselves. He wasn't there yet, but the earth around him was more than enough. Though only a 5th-tier spell, the boosted fire cyclone struck with the force of a 6th-tier incantation, mercilessly reducing the battlefield to cinders. The surviving apes tried desperately to flee the vortex, but in their panic, their burning bodies crashed into others, spreading the flames. Their fur ignited easily, turning them into living torches. Soon, the fire leapt from beasts to grass, then from grass to trees. The forest itself began to burn. Rohaim, what the hell did you just do? I didn't have a choice. How else are we supposed to deal with numbers like that without fire magic? Forget it. Move, all of you. If we get caught in this, not even bones will be left. Got it. The 3 men sprinted out of the burning grove. Rohaim, exhausted from casting, nearly collapsed, but Dean grabbed him and slung him over his shoulder before he could fall behind. Damn, the whole forest's gonna burn. It's fine. If the flames get too big, the frost dragons or ice giants up north will come check it out and put it out. Probably. TCH. Too bad for the monsters though, I heard burning alive is the worst way to go. Trading such casual remarks, the party escaped into the rocky outskirts while behind them, the inferno spread wider and wider. Fortunately, before it could rage out of control, a band of frost giants did indeed arrive to smother the blaze. The three adventurers, barely escaping the chaos Rohaim had half-intentionally unleashed, gathered in a rocky hollow. Breathing hard, they sat down, tearing open rations of jerky, bread, and cheese, washing it down with wine from enchanted waterskins. It was Rohaim who finally broke the silence. So, what exactly happened back there? He had been in the middle of carrying out a mission. Deep inside the Azerlija mountains with Colton, fulfilling their orders, when suddenly, a communication from their party leader, Dean Crowheadon, had reached him. Startled by the urgency, he had rushed out of the mountains to meet him. In his haste, he'd cut across the nesting grounds of killer apes. Killing one had brought the wrath of hundreds down upon him, and while fleeing for his life, he'd finally linked up with Dean and managed to push back the horde. With the battle raging, there hadn't been time for explanations. I was inside the mountains when suddenly I got called out, nearly gave me a heart attack. Sure, long-distance links are possible, but they only carry a few words, and you even burned Onu's emergency relay just to summon me. What the hell happened, Dean? Before I explain, read this first. Dean tossed a rolled parchment at Rohaim. He unfurled it, eyes lazily scanning at first, until his expression froze. In moments, his eyes flew wide open in horror. Wah! What is it? What's written there? Colton, curious, asked beside him. But Rohaim dropped the parchment, his hands trembling uncontrollably. Uneasy at his strange reaction, Colton snatched it up and began reading. Not long after, he too dropped it as if it burned him. His whole body shook violently, and he collapsed to the ground, gagging as though to vomit. That was how devastating the message was. You done reading? Dean's voice was heavy. Gods above, is this real? This can't, how could this be possible? I can barely believe it myself. But it's the truth. Though he spoke calmly, the sorrow in his tone betrayed him. That grief alone convinced Rohaim, but instead, he burst into laughter. Ha! No, no, no. That's impossible. There's no way. That guy. You could stab him in the face with your spear, Dean, or blast him with a fourth-tier spell, and all he'd do is laugh it off with some soot on his cheek. You're saying someone like him lost, to a demon. You expect me to buy that? They say it wasn't just any demon. It was a great demon. A transcendent fiend, beyond even the demon gods of legend. Estimated threat level, 200 or higher. What? 200. For a century, no monster had ever been recorded beyond level 150. The number was so unfathomable it was meaningless. They whispered that perhaps the giant defeated 100 years ago by Dragon's Dream's second head, Lion El Dragondream, had been in that range. But that was legend, distant history, not the present. And their current lord, Monkey Spanner El Dragondream, was himself believed to be a monster on par with that legend. None of the party members even knew his full strength, for he had never faced a foe worthy of it. In the rare sparring sessions, they had only tasted fragments of his overwhelming might. Yet now, the claim was that he had fallen. His body destroyed. His very remains erased, by some demon that appeared out of nowhere. Number body. No proof. Isn't it more likely he's hiding somewhere? Playing one of his vanishing tricks. You know how he sometimes disappears for days on end, creeping around like. I thought the same. But, Dean's eyes hardened. There was proof. Proof. You know the weapon he always carried. Clumsiness Slayer. That cursed gauntlet that never stains with blood, why? What about it? That was all that was found. When the demon retreated, it threw it down as if to say, he was strong, but not enough. Rohaim's body crumpled. Though he often spoke of the man casually as, that guy, deep inside, he revered him. As a member of Dragon's Dream, he carried pride in the house and devotion to its head. Denial surged up within him, but Dean's next words struck like a hammer. Accept it, Rohaim. Our Lord, Lord Monkey Spanner, is gone. 61. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 2. Chapter 61. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 2. Boom. There was no sound, but their hearts sank heavily. A silence passed once more. Unable to bear the atmosphere, Rohaim raised the wineskin, took a deep gulp, and let out a long sigh. Did you really have to say it so bluntly? It just makes it hurt more. If I hadn't, you wouldn't have accepted it. Look at Colton, he's still half out of his mind. You're in denial, clinging to hope. If I don't cut it off here and now, it'll just fester. And you, old man. You've already accepted it. Of course not. Dean snatched the wineskin from Rohaim's hands and downed it in one go, as though trying to quench a burning thirst. Even if it was just wine they usually drank like water, it still carried the bite of intoxication. Yet Dean didn't care. He drank, then exhaled heavily. You think I want to believe it. But we have no choice. You know as well as I do, our Lord wasn't one for hiding in times like these. He loved games, yes, but never at the cost of the clan's future. You saw it yourself. The house is fracturing. Some, like Colton, are lost in shock. Others, like you, are clinging to denial. Some are scrambling to keep the clan together, while others whisper about abandoning it to follow only strength. The capital is chaos. Rohaim grit his teeth. Then shouldn't the branch lords step in? They're monsters in their own right. He knew the truth as well as anyone. Though weaker than the main line, the branch families of Dragon's Dream had carved out their own legacies. Each branch head had earned the title of monster. Heneros, Lord of the Dragon Kingdom branch. Odio, Lord of the Baharuth Empire branch. Baphalis, Lord of the Holy Kingdom branch. Same, Lord of the Argland Council State branch. Each one stood shoulder to shoulder with Monkey Spanner himself. Surely, if they stepped in, the chaos could be controlled. That's the thing. They haven't moved. By now, word of their actions should have reached us. But there's nothing. What? Why not? The main house is collapsing. Maybe. Or maybe not. They live in a different world, boy. Their power, their way of thinking, it's not ours to guess at. Yet Dean's heart churned. 150 years of shared history between main and branch, and now, at the first true crisis threatening the main line's survival, the branches remained silent. What did it mean? Perhaps they see this as an opportunity. Perhaps they think, now is the time for the branch to become the main. He banished the thought immediately. For others, such treachery might be conceivable. But not for him, not when he knew the greatest secret of Dragon's Dream. Regardless, the main family is in crisis. It could splinter at any moment. And then, to make matters worse, a group calling themselves Darkness appeared, claiming to have slain the demon that killed our Lord. Now they want to join Dragon's Dream. Rohaim nearly choked. They killed the demon that killed him. Gods, are there that many monsters in this world? What is this, some kind of food chain for freaks? Dean snorted. If that's the case, I'd be at the very bottom of it. You're seriously lumping yourself in with them, old man. But of course, he wasn't wrong. Though no branch head, Dean Crowheadon was no mere man either. Among the party, only he had crossed into the realm beyond heroes, the domain of monsters. If the clan was a gallery of beasts, Dean had earned his place. Even if, as he joked, he was the weakest among them. Don't give me that look, boy. Keep staring and I'll put a spear through your eyeballs. Sorry, sir, but still, if things are that bad, shouldn't we head back to the main house? You said it yourself, it's chaos. Dean shook his head. The youngest has it handled. And he told me in no uncertain terms, do not return. This letter we're reading came to me through a trusted retainer of his. Rot, then. Rohaim blinked, then nodded as he remembered. Ah, right. He stayed in the capital. Makes sense. But then, why would he stop us from going back? If anything, shouldn't we be there to help him stabilize the house? Dean's gaze hardened, his voice dropping to a chill. Because going to the capital now would be dangerous. What? Why? The crisis is over, isn't it? The demon's gone. The boy says it all feels staged. Rohaim fell silent. Dean continued, his tone heavy. It wasn't in the official dispatch, but he sent me a private letter. In it, he described what he saw. The operation against the 8 fingers, the sudden appearance of the demon, our Lord's death, the immediate arrival of darkness, their triumph, their sudden desire to join Dragon's Dream. Every piece fell into place too neatly. Too perfectly. His eyes narrowed. Tell me, Rohaim, do you honestly believe those darkness fellows want to join us out of respect? Out of admiration for Dragon's Dream, the ones who killed the demon that killed our Lord? You mean to say they came to swallow Dragon's Dream whole? That's what Rot thinks. That maybe this entire affair was orchestrated as part of a scheme to consume Dragon's Dream from within. SSSSSHH. Rohaim shuddered as goosebumps ran down his skin. Even just from the report, this was a national-level crisis, perhaps even global. Hundreds of demons, difficulty levels between 30 and 50, had appeared across the capital simultaneously. A demon estimated at difficulty 200 or above had summoned them, throwing the city into chaos. It rivaled the demon god's turmoil from 2 centuries past, a calamity by every measure. And now, there might be something behind it. Something pulling the strings. Not merely to break Dragon's dream, but to swallow the entire clan whole. A being strong enough to treat a difficulty 200 archdemon, the Re-Esti's kingdom, and a great clan like playthings on the palm of its hand. What kind of power would that take? Rohaim could hardly imagine. Then, these darkness people, could they be? Most likely pawns. That's Rot's suspicion, at least. And you know as well as I do, Rot's the sharpest mind among us. True enough. If that kid had chosen magic instead of obsessing over relics and swordplay, he'd have outstripped me long ago. He'd already be casting 4 tier spells by now. Rot, the youngest of the party. Barely 20, still a fledgling, but brilliant beyond measure. So much so that, on missions, the party often left the thinking to him, even over Rohaim the mage. Knowing he was still in the capital was reassuring, yet terrifying. Then we need to get Rot out of there. Leaving him alone in the capital is fool. Right now, he's the one holding what's left of the clan together. If he disappears, it all collapses. And besides, Rot chose to stay. He's baiting himself on purpose. We can't make that sacrifice meaningless. Bait. Against an enemy that crushed even our Lord. What are we supposed to do, Dean? We couldn't even handle that demon if all of us fought together. How do you expect us to stand against something like that? Which is why I came here. Dean waved a hand, as if brushing the gloom aside. Then, with deliberate weight, he asked. Tell me, do you remember the Sword Demon? You mean Senior Skull? Sword Demon Skull. A former leader of Dragon's Dream, generations before. His mastery of the Great Sword was so absolute it was said he cut down foes like a demon himself, earning the infamous title. Every head of the clan was myth incarnate, but even the party leaders carried their own legends. I only saw him once, at the induction ceremony. I was still a recruit then. He retired soon after, didn't he? I retired long ago. When I was still a green fledgling, he held the post of party leader that I now bear. And why bring him up now? Dean scratched his head, as though unsure whether to continue. This is classified, but, Rohaim. Have you heard of Paradise? Paradise. You mean from Paris's Adventures? That old tale about a separate world, some heaven, some afterlife created by the 6 great gods. Nonsense. If such a place existed, we'd have known long ago. Dean took a deep breath. And yet, it seems it's real. Ha! The words were absurd, like hearing that demons did charity work. Rohaim stared at Dean as though he'd lost his mind. But Dean only sighed. I didn't believe it either. But before he retired, Skull told me himself. Those adventurers of our house who achieve enough feats to be recognized, when they finally retire, they are granted entry into paradise. Really? Well, now that you mention it, I haven't seen him since retirement, but I figured he'd taken all the money he earned and bought land somewhere to play Lord of the Manor. Dean raised an eyebrow. Do you really think a man like that could sit around playing noble? Come to think of it, no. Rohaim pictured Skull's scarred face, the great sword slung across his back, his very being steeped in a lifetime of battle. A man so soaked in blood and adventure could never sit still as a genteel lord. His fate was to fight. Well, he was getting old. I like to think that by now, he's finally gone where he wanted to go, a true paradise of warriors. Dean's voice carried a wistful tone, tinged with reverence. Rohaim nodded. For Skull, a man who had lived wholly as an adventurer and a warrior, paradise surely was a place fit for him. At that same time, somewhere in Shinshi. Skull scratched at his ear suddenly. Why's my ear so itchy all of a sudden? As he pondered whether someone was badmouthing him, a sharp smack landed on the back of his head. Ow. Hey, Skull. What the hell was that? You just let go of the controls. Did you forget we're in a ranked match right now? Ah, sorry. My ear was itching. The so-called sword demon bowed his head apologetically. His scolder was a boy barely chest-high to him. Anyone who had known Skull in his youth, when he reeked of monster blood and showed no mercy in battle, would have fainted at the sight. The infamous warrior humbly lowering his head after a scolding from a child. Unbelievable. I must have been crazy to let some washed-up old man into my team. One more screw-up and you're out. So sorry. And Skull meant it. The boy looked young enough to be his grandson, but in truth, the child was 5 times his age, and far stronger. Human or not, Skull couldn't fathom how, but here in Shinshi, power dynamics were different. Everyone was stronger than him, and brute strength was no longer the law. Not that he regretted it. Far from it. After a lifetime where only battle brought him joy, he had arrived in a living heaven. Not some afterlife, but a paradise reached while still alive, under the protection of gods, where everyone lived in plenty. The greatest shock on arrival. The bathroom. Skull would never forget it. Forget noble estate's chamber pots, the first time he discovered a flushing toilet, and then, the bidet. He could only call it divine blessing. Never in his twilight years had he imagined such joy. He thought his days were nearly over, but with anti-aging and vitality potions, vigor surged back into his body. Later he learned that regular use extended one's lifespan well past 100 years. Only in a god city would such a thing be so commonplace. Skull decided to cast off his burdens, embrace it all, and start fresh. And so he did. Focus. Yes. He bowed again, gripping his controller with renewed determination. This time, he'd make sure to raise his rank. The monitor glowed, the two plunged back into their match. Once known as the Sword Demon, Skull, now 59 years old, was a man who, instead of preparing for the grave, had begun a brand new life in Shinshi. 62. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 3. Chapter 62. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 3. Dean, lost for a moment in thought, cleared his throat. Ahem. Anyway, before Skull retired, he told me something. Paradise lies somewhere within the Azerlija Mountains. Rohaim frowned. Wait, that's the same thing mentioned in Paris's adventures, isn't it? Oh, was it? Ha, damn, getting old is a curse, memory starts to get fuzzy, but listen. The secret Skull confided in me alone is this: paradise is real. What? If that were true, then what about the thousands of people who've spent over 150 years combing the Azerlija for it after reading Paris's adventures? Are you saying they were all wasting their time? Dean leaned in, lowering his voice, as though the shadows themselves might be eavesdropping. Though it was only the three of them in the clearing, his caution made Rohaim instinctively edge closer. Don't you find it strange? What's strange? Our own house, Dragon's Dream. Doesn't it strike you as odd? The patriarchs and the branch lead as power, sure, that makes sense. But think about this. We regularly auction off magic items, sell legendary weapons, and yet no one knows where they come from. Now that you mention it. Rohaim blinked. Dragon's Dream wasn't just a militant order, it was also an intelligence network, a broker of artifacts. Every item that came out of their auctions was of the highest grade, artifacts that even dwarven masters acknowledged as top tier. In fact, the name, Dragon's Dream, had become a brand, a guarantee of quality. So much so that some dwarves had bought pieces purely to stoke their own competitive fire, swearing, we'll forge something even greater than this. That rivalry had even sparked trade and relations between them later. But still. Dean went on, his voice grave. We're supposed to be high-ranking members of the main house, yet even we don't know the source of those items. The information division doesn't know either. They say the patriarch himself brings them in. Now, does that sound like he's crafting them one by one? No. There's a place, somewhere, where they're being produced. A true stronghold of the family. Rohaim whistled low. Huh. That's some sharp thinking, old man. I'm a mage and even I never thought of that. Dean smacked him across the head. Hey. Rohaim yelped. That wasn't a compliment. And you get one more for good measure. Dean cuffed him again, ignoring Rohaim's exaggerated groan. He cast a wary glance into the trees, half expecting monsters to be drawn by the noise, but all was still. 2 jokes, 2 hits. Fair. Now shut up and listen. If there's a forge, a facility churning out high-grade magical gear as though it were mass-produced, and the dwarves aren't behind it, in fact, records say they were fired up to compete with us, then where else could it be? I say that's where our true power lies. Then what does that make Dragon's Dream itself? Dean's eyes hardened. The gate. The customs post. In national terms. Just the border city. The real nation lies elsewhere. Don't you think your evaluation's a little harsh? Then how else do you explain the monstrous talent of every heir the patriarch has ever brought back? Honestly, I always figured that if Lord Monkey Spanner ever named his successor, that alone would be proof enough. Power that brushes against the realm of myth, that doesn't just pop up anywhere. Dean had heard the news from the capital and felt it in his bones, a realization born not of logic but of instinct. There were powers in this world that dwarfed even what Dragon's Dream prided itself upon. And if such powers existed, then all their glory could be crushed like glass underfoot. So he thought of what must exist behind the family. A greater force, one hidden in shadow, that might resolve this entire calamity. That's why I came here. Skull's words, the hints in Paris's adventures, if they're true, then something lies beneath the Azerlija mountains. Something real. And that place must be paradise. Rohaim frowned. But the patriarch almost never left the capital, right? Ouch. Did you just hit me again? You're supposed to be a mage and you can't even think of teleport or gate magic. Stop measuring everything by your limits. Think in terms of legends, no, myths. Otherwise you'll never even scratch the surface. Dean rapped him on the head again, then continued in a calmer voice. From here on, we need to change our perspective. We're not just adamantite-ranked adventurers of Dragon's Dream anymore. We're challengers, peering into the realm of myth. Rohaim groaned. So what, we're heading back into the Azerlija mountains. We were about to finish the mission and return to the capital. Yes. But we're in better shape than most adventurers. You too, finished with the dwarves. Mostly. Didn't wrap up everything, but I don't work for free. Well done. Even if you could do more, you don't. That's the rule. No charity. Not for us, not for anyone. That's why guilds exist, why contracts exist, why payment is sacred. It's law. And leaving the dwarves, requests unfinished left them leverage. Enough to justify lingering in their city, to establish a base, to draw more from them later if needed. Good. Then we'll use the dwarves' city as our foothold to explore beneath the Azerlija. Rohaim, wake Colton. If we've decided, then no more wasting time. Can't we rest a little longer? No. Up. Walk it off. Don't think I'll go easy on you. Grumbling aside, Rohaim clammed up the moment Dean raised a fist and went to shake Colton awake. The poor man, still frothing from shock, jolted upright with a wild cry. Wah, who am I? Where am I? Lord Monkey Spanner. Only to earn a solid punch from Dean, followed by a quick rundown of the situation. Groggy but resigned, he got to his feet and started walking. And so, the three of them set off toward a place known as the Rift, a scar in the Azerlija near the Dwarven kingdoms. That would be their starting point, their path into the vast underground in search of paradise. How long will it take? I don't know. But someday, perhaps, they would find it. Meanwhile, far away, Tiamat was swallowed by darkness. Leaving Shinchi behind had gone smoothly, but after passing just one outpost, he was running through a pitch-black void. No moon, no starlight. Just endless, suffocating dark. Of course, his eyes could cut through pitch blackness like blades, but seeing was not the same as knowing. Where am I supposed to go? The cliché who am I, where am I? Crossed Tiamat's mind as he wandered the cavern. Even at a slow pace, his stats meant he moved several times faster than a normal man. And yet, after what felt like half an hour of twisting corridors, he could no longer tell if he was making progress or simply circling back upon himself. Why in the world was the guild hall buried under this mountain in the first place? Why the 12, now Shinchi, had placed their guild structure beneath the Azerlija was a mystery, one likely never to be answered. Still, something about the situation nagged at him. Back in Yggdrasil, during his idle hours, he'd often read web novels with this exact setup. Ordinary, well, self-proclaimed ordinary, men and women summoned or reborn in another world, granted overwhelming power, then strutting about as if they owned the place. He had chuckled at those tales back then. Who would have thought he would end up in one? And if this was reincarnation, then his character build was beyond absurd. Immense stats, immense magic, fully intact skills, and not only that, loyal subordinates and the guild hall itself had come along. If he were reading it, he would have called the balance broken from chapter 1. The outside world, by comparison, seemed pitiful. Monkey Spanner had explained it. The strongest heroes out there were barely level 30 to 40. In Yggdrasil, that was the kind of level you pushed through in the early days of dungeon grinding. With enough dedication, or obsession, you could hit 100 before long. 30. That wasn't a peak. That was tutorial. And yet, the one suffering now was not the weaklings outside. It was Tiamat himself. How'd I even get out of here? He scanned his surroundings, but in truth, he was unprepared. He'd stormed out without so much as a plan. His inventory was stuffed with weapons and gear, of course, but what he needed now wasn't a sword, it was a map. And even then, what good would a map be in a place he had never set foot in? The combination was poison, endless tunnels, oppressive dark, no experience navigating caverns. His vision cut through shadow, but it didn't make the labyrinth less maddening. Anxiety curdled into irritation, irritation into outright foul temper. He had meant to burst into the outside world and savor its sights, sounds, and scents, but instead he found himself stuck wandering aimlessly underground. Already his mood was bottoming out, weighed with unease about this strange world, guilt toward Aya, and the crushing loneliness of 2 centuries lost. Now this. His patience snapped. Perhaps it was because he wore Tarnhelm, his world item, masking him in human form. Suppressing emotions felt harder like this than in his dragon body. And so he gave in. He let the storm inside his chest loose. But the storm did not come out as a scream. It erupted as a torrent of annihilation, an exhalation of blinding power, a breath that seared with transcendent heat. Dragon breath. Soundless. Merciless. A column of black fire roared forth, gouging through stone, burning away the dark itself, and lancing upward into the unseen vaults of the earth. 63. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 4. Chapter 63. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 4. Among the 200 world items said to exist in Yggdrasil, Tarnhelm had always been regarded as junk. Yes, it carried the dignity of being a world item, but its sole function was to change appearance and race. Beyond that, it had no practical value, barely 1% of what other world items could do. It had some defense, true, but anyone serious about combat would prefer a piece with better bonuses. No one would waste a slot just for that. But when Tiamat bought it for the staggering price of 1 billion gold, trading even divine-class equipment, the situation changed. For all his overwhelming stats, skills, and classes, his massive dragon body came shackled with countless penalties. Even after joining the Zodiac, he rarely went on hunts with them, reduced to little more than a mascot. Sometimes his gigantic form and devastating dragon breath earned him use as a siege weapon against guild fortresses, but beyond that, he was seen as inefficient. Once Tiamat acquired Tarnhelm, however, everything shifted. The world item's effect allowed him to shed his colossal dragon form and assume the size of a human. Just as I hoped. Perfect. Now I can really enjoy myself. His stats and classes remained unchanged, but now he was freed from the restrictions of his dragon body. He could wear proper equipment. He could move with freedom. And so, a broken player was born. A dragon's natural stats were already many times greater than a human's. Transplanted into a human-sized frame, those same stats and skills became a nightmare. Yggdrasil's player base soon learned what happened when the strongest race, mockingly, met a useless world item, mockingly, and turned into the strongest race, period. Some compared him to the old fighter mode exploits in retro games. Others flooded forums with complaints. Is the admin team insane? They're just letting this exist. Even in a broken game, this is too much. Exploiting a trash race with a bugged item, this is ridiculous. The devs, of course, did nothing. World items were officially sanctioned cheats. If they nerfed Tarnhelm, they would have to rebalance every other world item, and no one wanted that nightmare. With Yggdrasil already in decline, they handwaved it as a hidden piece, discovered by players. By then, most of the legendary pioneers had left. The top-ranked warrior, the Lion King of the Zodiac, was gone. The great festivals and world events drew fewer and fewer eyes. Even if Tiamat called himself the strongest, it was an empty boast in a dwindling world. But here, in this other world, he now understood why world items were world items. Quote. Huh. A stunned groan escaped him. Before him stretched not a hole, but an entire tunnel wide enough for his dragon-sized self to stride through with room to spare. A passageway bored in a single straight line, dozens, no, hundreds, of meters long, opening to a distant patch of deep blue night sky. The tunnel walls gleamed like glass, smoothed to perfection. There had been no quake, no noise, no resistance. Soil, rock, ores, everything had been vaporized, melted into nothing under the overwhelming heat of his breath. What is this? He touched the wall in disbelief. SSSHH. Steam hissed where his hand met the glassy surface, and he yanked it back with a gasp. The molten residue trickled off his fingers, at first like lava, then crumbling into harmless powder. Then it struck him. His draconic lineage was a hybrid, black and red. Shadow and fire. His breath was not pure flame but black fire, heat laced with curse. The heat alone had bored through the cavern. No, thinking back, even in Yggdrasil, the laser-type dragon breath had never displayed this much power. In massive guild wars where thousands clashed, the piercing force of such a breath was rivaled only by siege golems. But there was one difference, this time it had been unleashed in his human form. Wait, in Yggdrasil, did I never, or could I never? Tiamat frowned, lost in thought. In the game, he had never once used dragon breath while transformed into a human. The charging motion, the unleashing of power, it was always locked to the dragon's form. He had even joked about it during roleplay. Behold, my ultimate technique. The breath, usable only in my true draconic form. It was a performance more than anything, since most enemies had already been crushed in his human form. He had assumed it was impossible. But Tarnhelm only altered his appearance and race, stats, skills, techniques all carried over unchanged. Which meant, if he had ever tried, he could have breathed fire as a human all along. It felt like stumbling onto a hidden mechanic. For a moment, satisfaction flickered across his face. But it vanished quickly. The tunnel he'd blown straight to the surface was a risk. He had no idea how long he had wandered, but that shaft could very well become an entrance for outsiders to infiltrate Shinsi. Worse, someone might have seen his breath erupting. In Yggdrasil, dragon breath had a set range, dissipating after a distance. But this world wasn't bound by game mechanics. The tunnel stretched for hundreds of meters in a clean, molten line, and who knew how far the blaze had reached into the sky. I need to collapse it. Seal it off before anyone finds it. With that decision, Tiamat sprinted toward the surface. Meanwhile, 3 members of the Dragon's Dream Party were making their way up the slopes of the Azerlija Mountains. They moved carefully, slipping past monster territory, masking their presence until they reached the foothills. The mountains stretched endlessly like the spine of a titan, but if you set your sights on a single ridge, the way forward wasn't impossible. How much further? About half a day's climb. Climbing at my age, my bones are groaning. Quote. Just minutes ago he had claimed to feel spry, and now he was whining again. Rohaim gave Dean a sideways look, madman. He quickly looked away before Dean noticed and smacked him. What about the dwarves? What exactly were you doing in their kingdom? Well, that's. Before Rohaim could answer, Colton cut in. And then the world went silent. The chirping of insects, the cries of birds, even the distant howls of beasts vanished. An oppressive hush swallowed the night. Rohaim and Colton froze mid-thought, their minds grinding to a halt. Dean collapsed to his knees, crushed by a primal dread that seized every nerve in his body. Then, from beyond the ridges, it came. A pillar of black fire erupted, punching through the twilight sky. It devoured the light around it as it rose higher, until it seemed it would consume the heavens themselves. The 3 adventurers caught only a glimpse, for it was gone in an instant. Yet even without seeing its full ascent, the sheer, annihilating pressure carved into their souls. The pillar vanished. Silence fell again. 1 second, 2, 3. And then the world screamed. Every beast, every monster, every living creature across the mountains erupted into frantic cries, a cacophony like the world itself convulsing under terror. Chirp chirp chirp. Grr. Gya. Kyak. Birds, beasts, predators, and monsters alike, without distinction of species, all shrieked and bolted in madness. It was sheer luck the party had taken a detour around monster territory. Had they gone straight, they would have been trampled by a stampede gone berserk. But would those creatures even have noticed them? Looking at deer and orcs, yaks and basilisks fleeing shoulder to shoulder in blind terror, it was doubtful they'd spare so much as a glance. Even ogres and gigant basilisks, apex predators of the land, were swept up in panic, scattering in every direction. The only reason Dean hadn't obeyed his instincts and fled as well was because his companions, Rohaim and Colton, had collapsed, their minds frozen. Clamping down on his terror with superhuman discipline born of years of experience, Dean forced his legs to remain planted on the earth. For several minutes that felt like eternity, death and despair pressed over them. Over and over, Dean's thoughts shattered and reformed. We're dead. We're dead. We're dead. The fear was overwhelming, a force that threatened to break his mind. Only his hardened will kept him from going mad. When at last that dreadful aura receded, Dean staggered back to his senses. What the hell was that just now? He gasped for breath. Already he was exhausted, every shred of stamina and mental strength burned away in mere minutes, where hours of battle against killer apes hadn't drained him. That alone placed him beyond the realm of ordinary heroes. At his side, Colton and Rohaim lay half-conscious, their minds having fled rather than face the terror head-on. It was their own form of mental defense, proof they too had reached the threshold of heroism. Hey! Get up, both of you. Wake up. Ufuua. Grrrgghhhhrrraaahhh. The two muttered incoherently, swaying like drunks before collapsing again. Dean knew it would take time before they recovered. So he laid them gently on the ground. At least they were safe, the beasts had all fled. It would be a long while before any dared return. Perhaps never. With a groan, Dean sank down beside them. His body ached, his mind trembled. He couldn't bear to recall the image that had seared itself into his instincts, the memory that screamed annihilation. Something unspeakable had occurred. Something that had driven every living thing in the mountains into a frenzy of flight. Compared to the raw instincts of beasts and monsters, could humans truly claim to be wiser? Hua. Dean let out a long, ragged sigh. Nothing made sense. And then, rustling in the brush. His body tensed. He reached for his spear, but his legs gave out. He leaned against the shaft like a feeble old man, trembling. If even a threat level 50 monster appeared now, he was finished. Not only him, Rohaim and Colton too. Cold sweat soaked his gloves as he gripped the weapon tighter. The undergrowth parted. What stepped out was a person. Hello there. A boy. Draped only in a sheet of black cloth, appearing in a place no human should. 64. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 5. Chapter 64. Those who wander in search of God and Paradise 5. Hello. Nice evening, isn't it? Quote. Hey, can you hear me? Hello. Maybe not. Hello. That's not it either. The boy muttered in a puzzled tone. The words themselves were understandable, but the place was all wrong. Dean thought, what is a human doing here? Then, looking at the boy's face, another question arose. Why does someone with such a face appear in a place like this? The Azerlija Mountains were no place for a child. Monsters of threat level 50 and higher roamed freely. Dean himself had barely survived against a pack of killer apes earlier. And yet, here stood a youth. Draped only in a strip of black cloth covering his body from the neck down, his long navy blue hair spilling to his shoulders. His features, too beautiful, too unworldly, blurred the line of gender. He seemed a boy only because of his voice, slightly husky, just breaking, tinged with a strangely alluring charm. If not for the foolish small talk, Dean thought, the child's beauty alone could topple nations. But what Dean felt wasn't admiration. It was fear. A crushing weight bore down on him, like gravity multiplied. His shoulders screamed, his knees trembled. Without his spear to lean on, he would already be kneeling. A demon. The thought came unbidden. Unreal beauty, a voice that ensnared, suffocating pressure, and appearing here in the mountains without reason. He couldn't be an angel, so what else could he be? No horns were visible. Perhaps hidden. Dean's grip tightened on his trembling spear. Who are you? Oh, you understand me. You can hear me. Well then, my name's T. The boy paused, hesitated. Tith. Yes, Tith will do. Your real name. Dean caught the stumble. He instantly regretted pressing, but the boy, Tith, only scratched his head, sheepishly, instead of taking offense. Pale fingers slipped through a fold of cloth, brushing against silky navy hair. Dean imagined those fingers pressing into his throat. So absurdly pretty. Yet the pressure he exuded was terrifying. Facing him was like facing the clan head, Monkey Spanner himself. Dean's thoughts whirled. Am I losing my mind? Or has the world itself gone mad? Either way, this is danger at its peak. My real name, the boy said lightly, I gave you part of it. That's enough. But, why are you staring so hard? Are you an enemy? The question slipped out before Dean could stop it. Foolish, dangerous. His instincts screamed that this youth could snuff him out with a finger, that he stood on par with the clan head. To blurt such a question, if it cost his life, he couldn't complain. But instead of anger, the boy blinked. Why ask something like that out of nowhere? Oh. His eyes closed briefly, then opened. In that instant, the crushing aura vanished. Dean almost fell from shock. Just a blink, and the pressure evaporated like mist, leaving no trace. Grass was untouched. His companions Colton and Rohaim still lay unconscious, unaffected. So it was only me. Cold sweat drenched his back. What was this boy? Sorry. Forgot I had a skill turned on. A skill. That was a skill. Why? Is there a problem? Dean had no answer. Dean was struck speechless. A true demon, or something even beyond. Rot's letter flashed in his mind, about the masked demon in the capital, the one said to have killed the clan head. That fiend was estimated at threat level 200 or higher. And now, staring at this boy, the two threads connected. Dean shivered. That sensation still lingered in his body. He remembered the stampede, beasts and monsters alike fleeing in blind terror. Was this child the source? If so, there was no chance of victory. No matter what he did, the result he imagined was the same: death, swift and meaningless. Dying didn't scare him. But dying without meaning, that, he could not accept. He still had things to do. Across from him, Tiamat, sighed inwardly. Damn, forgot to turn off intimidation. Just minutes ago, after breaking through the endless tunnel and finally stepping outside, Tiamat had been overwhelmed by what he saw. A night sky, unspoiled by smog or clouds. The last blush of sunset fading crimson into deep navy, stars emerging one by one above the vast mountain ridges. A natural beauty no photograph could capture, far surpassing the artificial skies of Yggdrasil. He'd stood there stunned, savoring it. Then, remembering to seal the tunnel he had carved, he'd melted the rock with a 9th tier spell, Incinerate. Luckily it worked well, blocking the breach. After that, he'd considered scouting the surroundings. To his surprise, human voices had reached his sensitive ears. Out here, he'd been told by Monkey Spanner that the Azerlija range was uninhabitable. Yet people were here. And one of them looked every inch the seasoned adventurer, spear in hand, leather helm and armor, short javelins strapped across his back, pouches and satchels at his belt. A capable fighter, no doubt. Perfect, Tiamat thought. He could ask for directions. Flying was too crude. This was his first taste of a new world, and he wanted to savor it slowly, like a true novice adventurer. Payment. No problem. His inventory was full of gear, gold, even magic items. But instead of conversation, he'd been met with hostility. And now he realized why. His aura. Aura-type skills apply indiscriminately unless you filter for allies. In Yggdrasil, upper-tier races and classes usually came with passive aura skills that could be toggled on or off. Warriors had killing intent, mages had mana field, special races had their own unique auras. Dragons carried intimidation. Its effects weren't fancy, just 5 levels of raw pressure, each stronger than the last. At Tiamat's level, its maximum effect could momentarily stun even peers. Normally, he kept it running at level 1, no drain at all, then surged it to level 5 when ambushing intruders. It was his signature tactic, simple but brutally effective, especially since he was clumsy in martial combat even in human form. That was why he always kept it on, and why these fragile locals had mistaken him for a threat. Now that it was off, the man's face relaxed. Conversation was possible. So, where were you headed? I don't see any roads around here. To the dwarves' kingdom. The dwarves' kingdom. Dwarves. The word instantly brought blacksmiths to mind. In Yggdrasil too, dwarves were the premier craftsmen, their racial bonuses favoring smithing, masonry, and alchemy. If you wanted to specialize in crafting, dwarf was almost mandatory. There had been dwarves even in the 12 heavenly generals. Did they, too, now possess wills of their own? Tiamat had barely explored the first floor of Shinshi, hardly scratched the surface. If dwarves lived here, perhaps they had ties to the city buried beneath the mountains. The thought filled him with curiosity. Would you guide me there? I'll pay you. Pay us, like that. Oh, my apologies. In his haste to leave earlier, Tiamat had forgotten he was still cloaked in nothing but a strip of black cloth. With a flicker, the drape vanished, revealing not bare skin, but armor. It was black leather armor, or so it seemed. But the overlapping scale-like pattern gleaming with metallic sheen looked far closer to a scale mail than any simple hide. It was the curse of the Black Dragon, a divine class item. Its defensive power was immense, granting both high physical resistance and damage reflection against attackers, but at the cost of a powerful curse placed upon the wearer. Most considered it the lowest tier among divine class gear, yet for a black dragon like Tiamat, whose natural resistances shrugged off curses, it was the perfect match. And that was only the beginning. The bracelets, gloves, and boots on his body, each radiated the aura of artifacts at least legendary, many divine. Some he had bought, others had been left behind when fellow guildmates retired, and had now become his. Dean, however, knew none of this. All he saw was that beneath that shabby cloth lay a brilliance of equipment he could hardly comprehend. Each piece shone with the weight of power, each item was unmistakably magical. Dean had long prided himself on his arsenal as the leader of Dragon's Dream, thinking his collection respectable among adventurers. Yet compared to the boy before him, his treasured gear seemed like rags. By now, he no longer had the strength to even be surprised. Demon, God, transcendent, whatever he is, he's beyond us. We can't fight this. The only way to live is to obey. Quote. Fine. I suppose we have no right to refuse. We'll follow you, just let us live. We still have things left to do. I never intended to kill you. And regardless, we can't depart yet. Dean gestured at his comrades. Colton and Rohaim still lay unconscious, showing no sign of waking. Tiamat considered for a moment, then raised both hands. Dual magic, greater vigor, great restoration. WH. A brilliant divine glow bloomed in each palm, splitting to flow into the prone bodies of the two men. Dean's jaw fell. A demon casting holy magic. And not just any, mythic level, and doublecast. What was I just doing again? My head feels clear. The exhaustion's gone, my strength is back, huh? Uncle Dean, who's this kid? God above. The two rose easily to their feet, vigor overflowing. Dean, who thought he had seen everything there was to see, realized he had been wrong. He had believed there was no room left for shock. That belief was shattered. This was no demon. This was a god. A great demon had appeared in the capital, they'd said, yet here, before their very eyes, a god had descended. Was this chance? Or fate? Dean closed his eyes in reverence. His journey was already over. For the god now stood before them. 65 Those who wander in search of God and paradise. 6. Chapter 65. Those who wander in search of God and paradise. 6. By some twist of fate, their party had become 4 instead of 3. Yet no conversation passed between them. When there had only been 3, idle chatter had sometimes filled the silence. Now, with one unusual new companion added, even that had died away. Hey, Rohaim, who do you think that is? No idea. They say he's a high priest training nearby, but do you actually believe that? Of course not. Colton and Rohaim trailed a little behind, whispering in hushed tones. They were exhausted, yes, but that alone didn't explain the strangeness. They had collapsed, only to awaken saved, by a beautiful boy who called himself a priest. The whole thing was far too suspicious. And what's with the old man? He's way too cautious. Even if he were a high cleric, sure, but doesn't he look far too young? A proper high cleric was usually an elder, bearded, wise, and seasoned by years of faith and service. Only through decades of devotion and recognition by the gods could one ascend to such power. Yet their new companion looked no more than 15 at best. If he truly were a high cleric at that age, he belonged not in the realm of heroes, but in legend, perhaps even myth. Dean, their party leader, had called him that, and so they had to accept it. But suspicion gnawed at them. And what had truly happened while they had been unconscious? Your sweat is heavy, are you tired? If so, I could. No. Please, no. Do not waste your holy miracles on the likes of me. Save them for when they are truly needed. It's really not such a rare spell, though. His flustered reaction was exactly that of an ordinary boy his age. But Dean's attitude toward him was far too cautious. No, more than cautious. It's like he's afraid. Didn't even treat the head of the family with that much deference, did he? I was thinking the same. Whoever this boy is, he's no ordinary priest. And that armor, those items, did you see them? Legendary at least, maybe divine. An hour earlier, when Colton and Rohaim had opened their eyes, they had seen something they would never forget. Dean Kroheim, the army spear, leader of Dragon's Dream, on his knees, tears welling from eyes wide as saucers, before a beautiful, otherworldly youth who looked utterly lost. And what a sight he was. Jet black scale mail, radiating magic so overwhelming Rohaim couldn't even read half of it. Yet he could tell enough. This armor rivaled, if not surpassed, the mightiest artifact he had ever known, the clan's own divine relic, the true dragon's sword. But its aura was not the harsh, domineering strength of the dragon's sword. This was different. It was alluring, magnetic, seductive in a way that whispered of ruin. A siren's call in steel. The more they looked, the more their hands had itched to reach out and touch it, no matter the danger. Dean had spoken then, voice hushed with reverence neither of them had ever heard from him, not even before their clan's lord. It is unwise to reveal such relics openly. No one could dare oppose you, but flaunting them may draw the eyes of the unworthy. Perhaps it would be best, as before, to conceal them. And the boy had tilted his head, thinking. Then, with a faint smile, he had drawn out another strip of black cloth from nowhere and draped it across his body. The overwhelming aura vanished as though it had never been. And so, cloaked once more, he walked with them toward the dwarven kingdom. Colton and Rohaim knew nothing about the boy. The only certainty was that something had happened while they were unconscious. Their bodies brimmed with vitality, fatigue gone as if erased. The obvious conclusion was that the high cleric boy had done something. When they had asked Dean, he had answered sternly. That person, no, that boy, is a high cleric training in this region. In a moment of crisis, he saved us. Therefore, you will never speak or act carelessly toward him. Understood? Ah, yes. But why? Shut up and listen. That boy is not only a precious talent, but someone far beyond what we can bear to comprehend. If, during this journey, either of you so much as inconveniences him, through carelessness, a joke, or anything that mars his comfort, then I swear, in the name of our clan and of the gods, I will tie you to a log, soak you in rotting blood and entrails for 3 days, and leave you in the heart of the great forest. Do you understand me? The thought won't happen. Do you understand, or not? Yes. We understand. Dean's sudden shout had made them freeze. Then, realizing the boy might have overheard, he glanced nervously toward him before dragging the two close. His bulging arms seized their collars, foreheads pressed together, and his eyes burned with madness. From that moment, neither dared question the boy again. Every time they thought to ask, the memory of Dean's trembling reverence, his honorifics, his barely veiled killing intent, chilled their tongues. This was not the way a party leader treated fellow adventurers he had fought beside for years. Who on earth is that boy? The more they thought about it, the more endless the questions became. So, we're really going to keep walking in this suffocating silence? Most likely. Half a day in silence stretched before them, and both sighed. Meanwhile, Tiamat was quietly moved. The mountains, the sky, the world itself, it was all beautiful. He had never truly seen such things. In his former life, half-paralyzed, dependent on machines even for basic bodily functions, he had only known a sky choked with smog, an artificial world confined to the limits of technology. True nature had been forever out of reach. Even with the best medical advances, synthetic organs, cybernetic replacements, cloned bodies, he had been far from the privileged class who could afford such miracles. His compensation money had been large, but never enough for a new body. To the upper echelons, his suffering had been nothing more than a gesture of face-saving. And so his entire life had become Yggdrasil, the artificial skies, the crafted forests, the digitized sensations that never truly felt real. But now, here, he was alive in a world untainted. Real wind, real mountains, a real sky. Every breath filled him with awe. At that very moment, Tiamat was savoring the world in its raw, unspoiled beauty. The clear air, the vast sky, the pristine landscape, this was what Earth might once have been, long ago. Beautiful. Simply beautiful. If this wasn't a jewel, then what was? He wanted to gaze upon this living gem forever. But after an hour of staring, even such beauty began to dull. Instead, curiosity about what lay ahead grew stronger. How much longer until we reach the dwarves' kingdom? At this pace, about 10 hours more. I see, walking isn't bad, but if it will take that long, I'll use a spell. That should be fine, yes. Fine. You don't need our permission. If our shortcomings are an inconvenience to you, then please, do whatever you wish. All right then. Just a moment. Why was this man speaking in such lofty honorifics? Was it simply because he'd been shocked by the spells earlier? Well, perhaps. Monkey Spanner had once explained that out here, the average level barely reached the 20s or 30s. For someone like that, seeing a 5th tier or 7th tier divine spell would be enough to leave them dumbfounded. Should I start holding back? They feel like beginners, but doing a full-on, newbie cosplay, is just, meh. In Yggdrasil, even players at level 100 sometimes equipped junk gear just to pretend to be novices. At best, it was harmless fun, helping real beginners out. At worst, it was trolling, tricking them for amusement. Tiamat had no desire to stoop to that. He would walk the world with a beginner's heart, yes, but not pretend to be one. Still, considering the world's weak power balance, he probably should tone things down in the future. Then again, they've already seen it. Why bother hiding anymore? It doesn't matter. I came here to enjoy myself, after all. The information in Shinchi was more than enough. What drew him outside was not necessity, but the desire to see this world for himself. To feel it. To taste it. He had told Aya already, but for now, he wanted to indulge in exploration. Monkey Spanner's death enraged him, yes, but the weight of 200 years and the mystery of this new world stirred his curiosity even more. A little enjoyment wouldn't hurt. And if outsiders came seeking him here, Well, he had his own plans for that. Dragon blessing, dragon heart. Ah, this power. Huh. The exclusive divine spells of the dragon cleric. One granted massive boosts to physical stats. The other amplified stamina and mental resilience. Layered together, they flooded the party with vitality. Their bodies felt lighter, their muscles surged with energy, strength bubbled up like a spring. Such a blessing was unimaginable. They had received blessings before, but never anything even close to this. Not once. Dean accepted it with solemn nods. The other two nearly jumped out of their skins. So this is the power of the divine. What is this? I've never felt anything like it. Now I get why Dean treats him that way. This blessing is beyond belief. No, this isn't 5th tier, not even 6th. Could it be the legendary 7th tier or higher? Just who? No. What is this boy? Well then, Tiamat said cheerfully, with buffs in place, we can move much faster. Let's be off. The three of them could only stare, caught between reverence, shock, and gnawing questions. But Tiamat, unconcerned, simply smiled. And so they walked again, now at a pace several times swifter than before. Asterisk 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 asterisk. If you want to read 10 advanced chapters ahead, visit my Patreon, patreon.com/vanity01.